Chapter 406. In a world filled with golden light, barriers condensed from vast auras were like inverted bowls. Countless streams of energy whistled past, tearing apart the baleful aura in the area. Qing Xian and that black dragon, they're here too. They arrived at the Holy Light Lake at a leisurely pace. Yin Nuoxing and the others stood at a place where there were fewer people and quietly dispersed their domain. The remaining aura isolated them so that no one could detect their existence. Qi family, Qinghai Palace, 1 Yuan Hall, First Dawn Palace, 7 Stars Palace, Constellations Palace, Astral Pavilion, Xian family. Yuanxi looked at the group of people, nodding his head as he identified some of the forces. Towards the end, his face became a little pale. Yin Nuoxing also gasped when she heard his voice. The enemies are all here. Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly, wiping the cold sweat on her cheeks. This time, they really entered a wolf's den. Suddenly, she seemed to feel that something was wrong and asked, "Where's the sacred weapon shrine? Why aren't they here?" Hearing this, Yuanxi was stunned. He turned his head back and widened his eyes, but after staring for a long time, he still couldn't see them. Over there. At this time, Mo Yinhua smiled and pointed to their right. Similarly, there was a group of people in gray robes. There were very few of them, and they were very inconspicuous. The people of the Sacred Weapon Shrine are very good at hiding themselves. If you want to find them, unless you know them very well, it's usually impossible to find them, said Mo Yinhua. Legend has it that the holy light water is actually the blood that flowed out from the old body of the light god. Every drop of the god's blood contains endless essence. If it can be refined into a cauldron of pills, it can prolong one's life and even bring about unexpected gains. Mo Yinhua said, "It's also said that the Holy Light Lake is actually a breeding ground. There's a demon god or a powerful demon beast left behind in the ancient times. Now, the only place where the Holy Light Lake manifested is this place that we just discovered. I'm afraid we can't find it anywhere else." Mo Yinhua sighed. This might be the reason why those guys had suddenly set off. Previously, those forces had suffered a great loss in the Ghost Forest, but now they had rushed over in a hurry. Nightmare, who was standing at the front, had been looking around since he arrived. He was looking for Yin Nuoxing. His battle with Yin Nuoxing hadn't ended yet, so he was itching for a fight. He couldn't wait to find Yin Nuoxing for a fight. Although the timing wasn't right, he had never paid attention to these things. Found Yin Nuoxing and the rest stood at the back, at the outermost part of the crowd. They even used Ling Hong's sword to isolate their presence. But even so, they couldn't withstand Nightmare's thorough search. Moreover, his group was quite outstanding. Therefore, when Nightmare turned around and looked in the direction they came from, his eyes flashed with a strange excitement, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. They were still chatting a second ago, but a sense of danger surged in his heart without warning. Yin Nuoxing suddenly raised his head, only to see a black scythe rapidly enlarging in his eyes. Damn it! Seeing the black scythe, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but curse in a low voice. This Nightmare really knew how to stir up trouble. Of all the times, he just had to find trouble with him when there was a circle of enemies around. Moreover, he clearly knew that Mo Yinhua was next to him, but he still attacked fearlessly. This made him neither angry nor shocked. Clang! A violent roar suddenly rang out, causing the surrounding people to temporarily lose their hearing. The netherworld ruined sword and the black scythe collided violently, and the majestic energy directly sent the people around them flying. No one expected these two guys to actually fight in this place. Yin Nuoxing, as expected, you came here. Very good. This time, let's fight to our heart's content. A very evil, even dark, smile appeared behind the black scythe. Nightmare seemed to be unable to suppress the throbbing in his heart. The scythe in his hand danced like a windmill, catching Yin Nuoxing off guard. Bastard, even if you want to stir up trouble, you have to look at the time. Can't you see that this is not a *king suitable place? Yin Nuoxing cursed angrily as he fought back. As soon as he finished speaking, The netherworld ruin sword suddenly lifted the black scythe up and then slashed it down forcefully. A sword aura shot out and blasted a hole 10 feet wide in the ground. Stepping back a few steps, Yin Nuashing looked at Nightmare, who seemed to be twitching and laughing crazily on the opposite side, and couldn't help but frown. He felt that there were malicious gazes directed at him. There's a road to heaven, but you don't take it, and there's no door to hell, but you throw yourself into it. If you stay in the 9 divine temples, maybe I really can't do anything to you, but here, Chi Haoyu's black eyes flashed with a cold light, and he sneered in his heart. Haoyu, this is not a good place to fight with the divine body. The rich light elements in this world are simply a stage built for him. Moreover, he has a divine weapon on him. Without the eternal divine weapon, no one can touch him. Seeing Chi Haoyu sneer, Chi Yu couldn't help but frown, patted him on the shoulder, and reminded him, I have my own plans. Elder, don't worry. If we're both in the immortal step realm, and the divine body chooses to use a divine weapon to suppress me, then he's just a trash who only relies on a weapon. Chi Haoyu pursed his lips and sneered. Indeed, Yin Nuashing once said that in a battle of the same level, there was no need to use a divine weapon. He could ignore a lot of things, and he didn't care about a lot of things. The only thing he was afraid of was that his reputation would be tarnished. Moreover, in his battle with Nightmare, he didn't use the netherworld ruin sword to suppress the latter. It could be seen that he wasn't joking. Looking away from Chi Haoyu, Yin Nuashing snorted coldly, but he wanted to kill the Chi family in one breath. This group of grasshoppers really annoyed him. That's the divine body. It's very strong, but it can only make a splash among the young people. Although he has a divine weapon, it depends on who uses the divine weapon. Guanqiu gently pinched his fingers and glanced at Yin Nuashing indifferently. There was a faint murderous intent surging on his face. Although this guy concealed it well, that faint murderous intent was still detected by Yin Nuashing, and his frown deepened. He just heard Mo Yinhua say that this guy wasn't easy to get along with and was hostile to him. He wasn't really afraid of the Netherworld King powerhouse, but there seemed to be more than one Netherworld King present. If they were determined to get rid of him here, then it would be a little troublesome. Damn it, a group of old men. Damn it, damn Nightmare. Feeling the murderous gazes, Yin Nuashing was so angry that he gritted his teeth. This Nightmare really knew how to pick the time. With such a ruckus, the whole world knew that he was here. Although it was only a matter of time before he was exposed, it was too early. When the time came, it would be extremely difficult to act. Behind him, Zian and the others were immediately noticed by Mo Yinhua, who protected them. Yin Nuashing turned his head, looked at them, and sighed. Their expressions were somewhat bitter. Should they say that it was a crime to possess a jade ring, or that it was better to say that those people were insatiably greedy? They inexplicably provoked these big forces to oppose them and cause trouble. It was really an extremely helpless matter. But now is really not the time to make a move. It's enough to let his enemies know that he is here. After thinking for a while, Guanqiu nodded. He was about to call Nightmare back, but he found that he and Yin Nuashing were fiercely clashing again. Boom! Deafening explosions reverberated throughout the area. Yin Nuashing and Nightmare's figures flashed rapidly. Every time the netherworld ruin sword and the black scythe collided, a pit several meters long and wide would be left on the ground. You bastard! You bastard! You bastard! Yin Nuashing, who was angry out of humiliation, cursed and hit without holding back at all. The sword chi from the netherworld ruin sword brushed past Nightmare several times, and a majestic power hit the black scythe, causing the latter's entire hand to be numb for a while. However, the more it was like this, the more excited his face became. It seemed that he wanted Yin Nuashing to be even fiercer. Delightful. It's really delightful. Devil Nightmare laughed heartily and dodged to the side, dodging the chop infused with light essence. Stomping on the ground fiercely, his body twisted in a strange arc, and the huge scythe in his hand even turned into a curve as he brandished it. Soul stripping. Nightmare shouted, and the black scythe of malice suddenly became a little strange. A thin layer of transparent energy gushed out from the black scythe, and a faint purple light gushed out, setting off his face to be abnormally evil. Swish! As the strange black scythe swung down, a strange fluctuation instantly spread out and flashed towards Yin Nuashing like a bolt of lightning. A soul attack? Yin Nuashing was slightly stunned when he sensed the strange fluctuation. Although they were slowly reaching the point where they needed to cultivate their souls, he hadn't encountered a fellow who could mix in a soul attack. Although his own soul strength was between the demon rank and the demigod rank, he really wouldn't use it against an enemy. Yin Nuashing clenched his fist, and a ray of light lit up between his brows. A simple and ancient small bronze lamp trembled between his brows, and a wave of aura quietly spread out and enveloped Yin Nuashing. At the same time, his soul strength instantly condensed on the netherworld ruin sword, and he slashed it horizontally. Boom! Two formless soul strengths collided in midair, and finally, both were annihilated. The netherworld ruin sword suddenly stabbed towards the black scythe and restrained it. Yin Nuashing took advantage of the situation, and his right hand was covered in 4 tiny talismans. He punched towards Nightmare's chest. At this critical moment, Nightmare still laughed loudly. He put down the black scythe with both hands and formed a few seals with lightning speed. Then, he punched out to meet Yin Nuashing's fist. Black God Seal. Boom! The pitch-black fist had just formed when it was torn apart by a violent force. The 4 talismans exploded in an instant, and a ferocious wind of energy blasted out. It missed Nightmare's arm and landed squarely on his chest. Bam! The dull sound of flesh colliding caused everyone to shrink their necks. When they turned back to look, they saw Nightmare spinning and flying away. However, before he left Yin Nuashing, he pulled the black scythe with him. The sharp scythe slashed through the void, and Yin Nuashing, who was closest to it, couldn't dodge in time. A wound that was neither deep nor shallow appeared on his fair and handsome face. Immediately, bright red blood with hints of gold flowed out. Cough. This feels good. After forcefully stopping his body, Nightmare landed on a rock with the black scythe. He slowly squatted down and covered his chest with his hand. He laughed loudly and coughed a few times. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but there was still a sinister smile on his face. Bastard, don't hit someone in the face. You be *TCH. You're shameless. I'm a dog. A burning pain came from his handsome face, causing Yin Nuashing's veins to bulge. When he moved his mouth, he drew in a cold breath when he touched the wound. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. They couldn't help but curse silently. One was crazy enough, and the other was crazy enough. What a perfect match. Chapter 407. The area in front of the quiet lake of light was a mess. There were potholes everywhere. The battle between the two did not affect the people below, but it caused a lot of damage to the area. There were only 2 panting sounds. Everyone was watching the battle and did not make a sound. It was unknown whether they were shocked or did not know what to say. After a while, Nightmare was the first to catch his breath. He patted his chest and licked his lips with his dark red tongue. Looking at his excited expression, it seemed that he was not satisfied with the fight. However, there was no chance for them to fight again. Guanxiu and Mo Yunhua hurriedly stepped forward and pulled the 2 of them back. The 2 of them were obviously in high spirits, but this was not a good place to fight. There were many people around who were eyeing them covetously. Wait, we can't do it here. After we go out, no one will care even if you fight until the sky falls and the earth shatters. Guanxiu pulled Nightmare behind him and said softly with a frown, Tisk, you're so long-winded. A group of people is dawdling. It's obvious that you're here to fight. If you don't make a move, are you going to wait for a fight? Nightmare snorted coldly. He did not rush forward to fight with Yin Nuashing for a few thousand rounds. When everyone heard this, they smiled bitterly. It was really as the rumors said. This guy would fight if he wanted to and did not care about anything. They thought that even if there were a few big forces here holding a meeting, Nightmare would probably drag Yin Nuashing out and start a fight. Guanxiu frowned. He also knew that this guy was a bit lawless and didn't put anyone in his eyes. But at this time, he could only patiently say, "There may be a fight later. Now that you've finished fighting, how can you have the strength to compete with others?" After all, they didn't come out to fight. "Little star, are you okay?" Seeing the fingernail-sized wound on Yun Nuoxing's handsome face, Xian felt a little distressed. She took a soft cloth and gently wiped it for him. I'm fine." Yun Nuoxing shook her head. With a thought, the purple night flame rose from the wound and expelled the black aura from the wound. Then the wound slowly closed. Nightmare's black scythe of murderous intent was a level 8 weapon. It could cause quite a bit of damage, even to those who were at the beginner god level. Logically speaking, it would be difficult for non-gods to heal the wounds it caused. However, in recent years, he had often been injured by gods. Yin Nuoxing had also figured out how to heal the wounds left behind by gods after getting injured time and time again. However, even though he knew, it only made him recover a little faster. He could not recover immediately. Nightmare hasn't gotten hold of that black sickle for a long time, so he isn't familiar with it. Furthermore, he isn't very good at using the 7 elements that it contains. If one day he can wield the black sickle with ease, then I'm afraid he won't be a match for anyone below the initial god level. Looking at Nightmare and then at Yun Nuoxing, Mo Yun Hua said softly. He had once held this black sickle, so he knew very well how powerful this weapon was. Yun Nuoxing nodded. He also understood this point. In that instant, what everyone could see was that he had been injured by the black scythe. But on a more subtle level, probably no one could see that the black scythe had instantly pierced through his light barrier that had been strengthened by the divine artifact. Otherwise, he would not have been injured so easily. The spiritual godly body is actually so powerful. Even Immortal 8 and Immortal 3 were only tied. The godly body has a divine weapon. Even the Emperor of the Underworld is not afraid of him. Did you forget that time in the divine sky city of the northern wilderness? The third elder of the Qi family had an arm cut off in one move. After all, he's just a guy who only knows how to use weapons. I don't think so. Everyone in the world knows the power of the divine weapon. The godly body is trying its best to restrain the energy of the divine weapon. Moreover, the Black Sickle of the Nightwalker Alliance is not to be trifled with. After the few people's voices broke the silence, there were finally some whispers. Listening to these voices, although no one directly pointed out the identity of Yin Nuoxing, he had been recognized by everyone. This was not a good thing for him. Brother Nightmare, let me take his life? Qi Haoyu, who had been standing in the distance, smiled sinisterly and walked out slowly. A majestic aura wrapped around his body, and the killing intent that was released made the temperature of the place drop a little. Beside him, Qing Xian also walked up slowly. His green eyes looked at Yin Nuoxing indifferently. He did not say anything. The divine qi in his body was surging, and he was ready to attack at any time. Everyone, including Qi Yu, was speechless. Not to mention Yin Nuoxing's own cultivation. The divine weapon he had on him was enough to fight against the foundation of an immortal force. It gave the former a headache. Now, these two guys had jumped out and threatened to kill him. One was from the Nightwalker Alliance, whose forces were spread all over the divine realm. One was from an ancient family, and the other was a dragon of the Eastern Sea. Their origins were not trivial. Not to mention the latter, the first two families had produced divine spirits a long time ago. They could pick the stars and catch the moon with a wave of their hand. The strength of their means was unimaginable. They were all extraordinary existences. Emperor Qi was said to be one of the most powerful divine spirits in the ancient times. Countless years had passed, but the Qi family was still standing, showing no signs of decline. His bloodline did not thin with the passage of time. Some people could even see that the Qi family was still in a prosperous stage, with endless experts. Qi Haoyu, who belonged to the bloodline of Emperor Qi, was the most outstanding person in the Qi family. He had inherited the core of the Qi family's unique skills. People could see a trace of Emperor Qi's combat power from his strength, but now he was only in his 20s. Yin Nuashing was so angry that his veins were bulging. Nightmare knelt there and coughed up blood. Looking at his eyes, it seemed that he still wanted to fight a few more thousand rounds. The two people who were ready to attack were not weaker than Nightmare. Yin Nuashing did not completely confront them, so he did not understand their means. However, his abilities seemed to be well known. No, I won't do it. Do you think I'm a butcher? Do you think you can do whatever you want? Yin Nuashing gritted his teeth and complained in his heart. Count me in. At this time, Yuanshi walked up and stood side by side with Yin Nuashing. He crossed his arms and looked full of fighting spirit, which made Yin Nuashing speechless. Why are you joining in the fun? Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and transmitted his voice. I'm here to watch you fight with 2 fists against 6 hands, hee hee. Yuanshi tilted his head, smiled, and winked, which made Yin Nuashing speechless. Qing Xian, let me go this time. I'll let you do it next time. Clenching his fists, Qi Haoyu laughed, looked at Qing Xian, and said. Everyone was speechless. These two people were too strong. They were fighting to kill Yin Nuashing. That was the dignified, spiritual, divine physique. Even the previous few divine physiques had died under encirclement. Few people could fight against him alone. How did he become exclusive prey now? Motherf asterisk her. Yin Nuashing was so angry that his handsome face became ferocious. Many artifacts shot out because of the turbulence in his state of mind and pointed at the 3 people below. When had he ever been looked down upon like this? Everyone blushed with shame. Yin Nuashing was also provoked to the point of going crazy. The things above their heads did not emit any energy, but they were already scared out of their wits. Hey, if you really have the ability, don't rely on these worldly things. Fight fair and square. Otherwise, in the future, there will be people who will treat you as a moving treasury. Qi Haoyu licked his lips with his dark red tongue and smiled sinisterly. Who cares so much about right and wrong in life? In the mortal world, I am who I am. What do other people's opinions have to do with me? Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and murmured in a low voice. Like a curse, it made everyone shudder inexplicably. Qing Xian couldn't help but gulp. He knew that this deep ice was most likely going crazy. You'd better. Qi Haoyu sneered. This old man will crush you to death. Boom! Before Qi Haoyu could finish speaking, a shout suddenly exploded. Then, everyone saw that the dozens of divine artifacts seemed to have all awakened at this moment, resonating with each other. Monstrous energy swept up an energy storm here, and a majestic pressure descended from the sky, causing everyone to be unable to breathe. Qi Yu was even more shocked, and hurriedly protected the former 2 behind him. The energy made him feel alarmed. He's crazy again. Qing Xian smiled bitterly. If he had known earlier, he would have told Qi Haoyu not to make such a fuss. In his heart, he had already put dozens of seals on Yin Nuashing. Divine body, don't release energy. You'll alarm that thing in the Death Mountain range. Suddenly, someone roared, sincerely hoping that they would stop fighting. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing was startled and seemed to realize that he had lost his composure. He coughed dryly, quickly calmed down the artifacts, and slowly put them back in his body. The pressure dissipated in an instant. Only then did everyone tidy up their makeup in a sorry state. They all heaved a long sigh of relief. Not to mention how strong Yin Nua planet was. Just these dozens of divine weapons were enough to defeat everyone below the elementary god level. The moment they regained their freedom of movement, many figures hurried away. Many sect leaders, major forces, and even Qi Yu, Guan Xiu, and the others rushed to the Black Mountain Range on the other side. They did not stay here. Divine body, just you wait. I'll take your head when I get out. Qi Haoyu walked to the back. Before leaving, he glanced at Yin Nuashing, snorted coldly, and said fiercely. Qing Xian followed Qi Yu and rushed to the Black Mountain Range. He looked back slightly, and then rushed over without looking back. If you come out, I'll kill you. Yin Nuashing was so angry that his teeth itched. Everything that happened today really made him very unhappy. I hope that at that time, you won't rely on these things and can fight fair and square. Qi Haoyu sneered. His eyes were cold and ruthless. He stared at Yin Nuashing and looked down at him arrogantly. If you dare to hurt him, we will dare to eradicate the chief family." At this time, a voice full of majesty exploded in the area, allowing the slow people to clearly hear it. The anger contained in the voice made Chi Hao Yu tremble, and then he hurriedly rushed into the Death Spirit mountain range. Even these people had come out. This time, it was really difficult to make a move. If they came out forcefully, they would all stay here. Hearing this voice, Yin Nuoxing sighed. These guys, he thought they wouldn't come. The void suddenly fluctuated gently, and more than a dozen vague figures appeared in front of Yin Nuoxing and the others. After a few breaths, they became clear. The person in the lead had blonde hair and golden clothes, as if he was bathed in light. This appearance, naturally, was Jin Wang. Accompanying him were several divine kings of the divine palace, and behind them, as expected, were 9 little tails. So slow, 2 hours late. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes at them and said, "You brat, you think it doesn't take time to come here from the divine prefecture." Jin Wang rolled his eyes, slapped him, and said, "We went to the divine palace of light." Yao Hua, this brat, cried and made a fuss. He didn't want to come, but we still drag him here. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing looked at Yao Hua strangely. The latter also looked over and tried to squeeze out a smile that was uglier than crying. Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shrugged and said nothing. Chapter 408. The Holy Light Lake is covered by a brilliant sea of light. Immersed in it, people feel that their internal organs are purified and sublimated, as if they have become the embodiment of light. Nearly 70% of the people had gone to the Death Mountain Range, and there were hundreds of people left here. What made Yin Nuoxing somewhat happy was that his enemies had all gone to the Death Mountain Range, and even the people of the Sacred Weapon Divine Palace did not stop. It seemed that the divine objects that were extinct in the world were not as important as the things in the Death Mountain Range. When they came close to the lake, no one could fly as they were all restricted by a mysterious power. They could only walk on foot. Fortunately, although there were strange rocks here, it was still flat land. A few miles wasn't too far, and even the gods could only climb over the rocks one by one. When Yin Nuoxing was taking a detour, he saw a person, which made him stunned for a moment. The blue robe carried a piercing cold air. The delicate and handsome face was stiff as if it was frozen in ice, making people who saw it would secretly say that it was an iceberg. This man had a bet with Yin Nuoxing. He is the descendant of the crystal family, Xiaoning, whom Yin Nuoxing met in the Divine Sky City. In the Divine Sky City, Xiaoning was defeated by the latter. Even so, Yin Nuoxing still thinks that he is a powerful guy. After all, he relies on another force. He is not really that powerful. After losing the bet, Xiaoning went back to her family to practice in seclusion. No one has seen him come out of the seclusion room for many years. So, he stayed there for several years. Now he comes out. He looks almost the same as before, but he looks more indifferent, giving people a feeling of emptiness. Yin Nuoxing thinks for a while. He walks to Xiaoning in confusion. He gently pats on Xiaoning's shoulder and gets close to her. He smiles. "Oh, you are here too." The old men by Xiaoning's side see the man. They suddenly explode in anger, as if they have seen a wicked devil. They all show their weapons and point at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing feels shocked. He didn't do anything. Xiaoning waves her hand to indicate that they are fine. Then, she looks at Yin Nuoxing. His eyes are as cold as usual. However, it is not as strong as when they met for the first time. In the past, he was cold, but now he is just like a piece of mysterious material with hidden brilliance. "If I had known that you were cunning, I wouldn't have made the bet with you. I lost a lot in the bet." Xiaoning looks at him for quite a while. She gives a sigh and says indifferently, he also knows from many sources that Yin Nuoxing's eyes are powerful. Now, he remembers that he lost a lot of money in the bet in the Divine Sky City. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing smiles bitterly. It is not his fault. He didn't want to hurt Xiaoning. It was Xiaoning who asked for it. I'm not a serious Heaven Vein master, and I've never learned that stuff. You guys are the ones who are on the right path." Yin Nuoxing grinned. Xiaoning smiles stiffly. She doesn't respond. Now, he is only an earth spiritualist. Among them, there is the Dragon Pulse Master. The last one is the Tian Pulse Master, which is known by all in the Immortals world and respected by all. Tian Pulse Master. He is not as powerful as the rumors say. He is just much stronger than ordinary people. He has his own specialization. He still has a long way to go. Everyone is shocked. They look at Yin Nuoxing, who smiles and walks out. Then, he puts his arm around Xianing's shoulder and comes back. They're all confused. Only Yuan Shi and Xian know what happened. They don't have any deep hatred against each other. They just had some small disputes in the past. They are not narrow-minded people. Let bygones be bygones. Let bygones be bygones. After they come back with Xianing, Yin Nuoxing tells everyone what happened. Everyone is enlightened. Then, they feel a little surprised. They all know the name of the first genius of the Crystal family. They don't expect that it is this cold-looking guy. The people of Yaoling didn't come. Or, all the people in the stone workshop of Shangtian City would have been here. Thinking of what happened in the past, Yin Nuoxing and Yuan Shi both laugh. Didn't the old guy Qing Feng come? Jin Xinwang looked left and right, but did not see Qing Feng's wretched figure. He thought that since such a big matter had happened here, that fellow should also appear. At this time, the Yuan family doesn't show up. Maybe they won't show up. Yuan Shi strokes his head. He hasn't seen Yuan Qian yet. Seemingly, she won't come. He wonders what happened after they got home. Thinking of his father's dignified appearance, Yuan Shi smiles bitterly. The Holy Light Lake is at the foot of the mountain. It is not very big. However, when people get close to it, they will feel that it is boundless, as if it is a world. It is not like a lake. Instead, it is like a vast ocean with countless lives. The sacred lake was sparkling, the mist was flowing, and the multicolored lights were shining. If one looked at it for too long, even their eyes would be blinded. The only element contained here was the extremely pure light element. The other elements were close to zero. When Yin Nuoxing and the rest arrive at the lakeside, there are already many people here. They are walking back and forth around the Holy Light Lake. However, no one dives into the Holy Light Lake. They just stretch their necks and look into the depths of the lake. In the past, many big forces have attacked the Ghost Forest. Every time they enter, they will lose many people and some rare weapons. In the forest, no one can find those weapons or their fragments. However, this Holy Light Lake seems to be something. Jin Jinwang bends down and picks up a green fragment by the lakeside. The fragment is rusty and has been around for a long time. After rubbing the fragment with his fingers for a while, Jin Jinwang sighed and casually threw the fragment into the Holy Light Lake. He watched it dip a few times on the surface of the water and sink into the lake. He then said it should be some kind of holy weapon in the past. Now, even the array pattern inside has been wiped out. Plop. Before Jin Jinwang's voice faded, a cultivator could not help but dive into the Holy Light Lake. He wanted to find the treasure at the bottom of the lake first. Since there is a fragment of a holy weapon at the lakeside, there might be a real holy weapon at the bottom of the lake. Seeing someone take the lead, the crowd could no longer remain calm. This was especially so after hearing Jin Jinwang's words. At this moment, they were even more certain that there was some kind of shocking divine object buried at the bottom of the Holy Light Lake. They all jumped into the Holy Light Lake one after another, causing waves of golden splashes. Do these people think that the Holy Light Lake is an ordinary lake? Lei Tian sighed heavily and shook his head when he saw these people enter the Holy Light Lake so recklessly. Pop! Lei Shenwang had just sighed when he heard a low and deep explosion sound, after which the crowd that was still on the lakeside saw many golden flames suddenly appear on the Holy Light Lake. They were as bright and moving as torches. The somewhat noisy lakeside suddenly fell silent at this moment. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared in horror at the blazing flames on the Saint Lake. In the blink of an eye, the flames had dissipated, and a black powder had appeared on the bright golden Saint Lake. Some people had only turned their heads, but when they turned back, they saw that a group of people who had been perfectly fine just a moment ago had turned into a pile of ashes. This strange scene caused a chill to emerge from the bottom of the hearts of countless people. Cold sweat involuntarily rolled down their foreheads. The burning of the light element is related to the field of elemental exchange. In today's world, there aren't many people who can do it. The gold god king frowned and said in a serious voice, "The burning of the light element with the fire element. This sacred lake was truly a divine object that couldn't be touched." Elemental exchange? Yin Nuashing muttered. Ugh. To put it simply, it is allowing one element to display the characteristics of another element. It is a little similar to elemental mixing, but it is not so simple. Jin Wang rubbed his ears and said, "Elemental mixing is only mixing a few elements together. Elemental exchange, like what we have just seen, uses light element to replace fire element to burn. In other words, the light element has turned into fire element at this moment." Thus, Yin Nuashing was stunned when she heard this. In the end, she covered her head and extended her hand to stop Jin Wang. She acted as though she did not understand, causing the latter to feel a little embarrassed. "Little star is stupid. It means..." Xian smiled. He took over Jin Wang's words and explained it to Yin Nuashing. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. Xiaoning frowned. She stood by the lake with her hands clasped behind her back. After quite a while, she suddenly raised her head and whispered to the group of people who were having fun, "This is a place of creation. There must have been a god who died here in the past." "What? Creation what?" Hearing this, everyone stops at once. They all turn to look at Xiaoning. They don't hear clearly what she is talking about, but the last sentence makes them take a cold breath. A god died here? Did the god mean that god? The place of creation was contaminated by the power of the god. Even if it was a barren land with no vitality, it could be turned into a land full of vitality. What's more, it had many more incredible functions than ordinary lands. The life it created was also not ordinary. Xiaoning frowned and explained. She read about it from the ancient books of her family. She didn't expect to see it one day. In the place of creation, things will go in the opposite direction when they reach the extreme. The extreme vitality created the infinite air of death. Creatures who were not born here couldn't enter it, and there was no way to crack it. Xiaoning murmured, "So horrible." Everyone was shocked to hear this. They thought that since it was the light element, they would ask Yin Nuashing and Yao Hua to go down and have a look. Maybe they would find something special. Now they all hesitated. As to this dangerous place, even the old guys of the god of light temple might be killed here. Then what should we do? Yao Hua couldn't help asking. He was dragged here from far away. He didn't want to go back empty-handed. Xia Ning glanced at the actions of countless people far away and glanced at the sacred lake. She thought for a while and said, "Let's go to the lakeside. It may be okay." Then he took the lead to walk into the sacred lake. The golden water reached his waist. If he went a little deeper, he could feel the burning pain. Seeing that everything was fine, Xia Ning waved at the others and began to search carefully in this area. The others saw this and followed her. This time, no one dares to go to the center of the lake. They scattered around the sacred lake and searched carefully. As soon as Yin Nuashing entered the sacred lake, he felt a strong yang energy surging up from the soles of his feet, causing him to shiver violently, and all the pores on his body opened and closed. As for Yao Hua, he also stopped abruptly, his eyes closed tightly, and his entire body trembled uncontrollably. This was the strongest light element, so strong that it could choke an underworld king to death. To others, it was undoubtedly a kind of drug, but to the two of them who possessed the light element, this was the best tonic in the world. Rich light elemental energy unceasingly surged up from his feet, and a comfortable feeling spread throughout his body, making Yin Nuashing feel comfortably warm. Golden energy rapidly scuttled through his body, illuminating him so much that he seemed transparent. Yin Nuashing slowly stretched his muscles and bones. He felt the energy flowing in his body. He couldn't help moaning slightly. If he could completely absorb the energy, his power would definitely be improved to a higher level. The slight moan didn't escape from the ears of Jin Wang and the others. They were shocked at once. They turned around and saw Yin Nuashing and Yao Hua. One of them was twisting his body comfortably, while the other was clenching his fists and enduring the great pain. The strange contrast between the two shocked everyone. They had guessed how they would react when they entered the sacred lake, but they didn't expect that they would behave so differently. Seeing Yao Hua in pain, Gold God King frowned. He didn't know why it was like this. Could it be that the light element is too strong and Yao Hua can't stand it? Jin Wang rubbed his eyebrows. He walked to Yao Hua at once. Anyway, Yao Hua looked so painful that he didn't want to stay here for long. Oh! Suddenly, Jin Wang approached Yao Hua. He didn't even have time to put his hand on Yao Hua's shoulder when Yao Hua's handsome face suddenly turned red. He covered his mouth with one hand, and a low moan escaped from his palm. Everyone was stunned. They saw that Yao Hua's fair face was suddenly flushed red. Even his ears were red. Only then did they realize that this guy was holding back his moan. However, it seemed that he couldn't hold it in anymore. Jin Wang was speechless. He was worried that something might have happened to this guy. He couldn't help but slap him. Chapter 409. After half a day, Yin Nuoxing finally adapted. At this time, Yao Hua had no choice but to leave the sacred lake because the energy in his body had reached saturation. He sat cross-legged on the lakeside and began to cultivate. Jin Wang also walked over to guard him. There were too many people in this place, so he didn't want to cause trouble. Stretching his body, Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh. Although both of them had light elements, he had a receptive, spirit, godly body. His body was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much energy there was, he could absorb it. According to his idea, even if it was this sacred lake, as long as he was given a period of time, he could turn it into an ordinary lake. Divine object. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from afar. A young cultivator fished up a golden jade from the water. It was as big as a fist and was shining with golden light. The light that leaked out made it look like it was made of gold and was full of divinity. Soul Pure Gold Jade is one of the top 10 golden jades in the Soul Jade series. 10th level. It's definitely at the 10th level. This is a divine object that even the Emperor of the Underworld would fight over. It can definitely be refined into a top divine tool. Seeing that golden object, the eyes of a large group of people turned red. Even the gods couldn't sit still and walked over. Yin Nuoxing even felt a dozen murderous auras rising. The young cultivator also felt the murderous aura, and a bitter smile suddenly appeared on his face. If he didn't do anything when he got the pure gold jade, then this wouldn't have happened. If he injected his aura into the pure gold jade and let it recognize him as its master, then he would definitely be smashed into pieces. Thinking of this, that cultivator gritted his teeth and threw the pure gold jade into the center of the lake. Although the treasure was good, the prerequisite was that he had to be alive to enjoy it. Everyone was stunned when they saw his actions. They watched as the golden light drew an arc in the air before landing in the center of the lake with a splash. They could only sigh in disappointment. They couldn't fly here, so they could only watch as a 10th level divine object flew away. They glared fiercely at the cultivator before returning to the place they were looking for. The young cultivator clenched his teeth. His heart was filled with resentment, but at least he was still alive. Yin Nuoxing rubbed her chin as she watched the pure gold jade fall into the center of the lake. Then, she nodded and poked Xian with her slender fingers. She moved closer to her ear and whispered, "I'll dive down and take a look. If anything happens, pull me up." Upon hearing this, Xian hurriedly turned her head, wanting to mediate. She had seen with her own eyes the people who had entered the sacred lake turn into ashes. Although Yin Nuoxing had the light element, which was compatible with the elements of the sacred lake, it was hard to guarantee that no accidents would occur. Yin Nuoxing gently grabbed her lily-white hand and smiled at her, saying, "It's fine, I'll just dive down here to take a look. If anything happens, just pull me up." Seeing that he was serious and didn't seem to be joking, Xian sighed. She knew that she couldn't dissuade him and could only nod. Her lily-white hand tightly grasped his hand as she whispered, "Be careful. If there's anything wrong, quickly come up." Yin Nuoxing smiled and nodded. Holding her hand, He took a deep breath and slowly dived down until the top of his head was underwater. The golden lake water submerged Yun Nuoxing's head. Warm energy gushed out from every pore of his body, causing him to shiver. He released a little of his soul force, but didn't feel any danger. Only then did he slowly open his eyes. His vision was filled with a golden color. His evil spirit, I couldn't see very far, but he could barely see that in front of him, the depth had suddenly decreased by a lot. That should be the center of the sacred lake. The lake was like a funnel. From the bottom of the lake, he could see many hands and feet moving under the water. There were also many things scattered on the shore. A fragment of a corner, an unknown stone, a damaged ring, a shattered bead, and many other useless things were buried here from the shore all the way to the center of the lake. Even the pure gold jade that he had just seen was bobbing up and down in the lake. After diving under the water for a long time, Yun Nuoxing didn't feel anything wrong. Only then did he feel relieved. It seemed that he wouldn't self-immolate like before. The sacred lake didn't reject people with the light element. After a while, Yun Nuoxing's head floated up. Xian immediately turned her gaze over. Seeing that he was safe and sound, she let out a sigh of relief. There were several times when she felt his hands trembling, and she almost couldn't help but pull him up. Smiling at her, Yun Nuoxing looked around. When he saw that no one was paying attention to them, he nodded and slightly opened his mouth. He transmitted to Xian, "I'll go down and take a look. You guys stay here. Don't go down." Hearing this, Xian nodded and also transmitted her voice, "Be careful. If it's us, it'll be fine. Little star, if you encounter any danger, come back immediately." Although she guessed that the sacred lake might not pose any threat to him, she still reminded him twice. Yun Nuoxing grinned and slowly sank into the sacred lake. With a kick of his feet, his body was as agile as a fish as he swam to the center of the lake. Watching him gradually disappear into the dazzling sacred lake, someone couldn't help but sigh. This guy is really too bold. Countless strong people have been buried here. On the shore, Jin Jinwang watched the black figure disappear into the sacred lake. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. How could Yun Nuoxing's little movements be hidden from them? Not only Jin Jinwang, but also Lei Tian and the others who were standing beside him were all paying attention to this little bastard's movements. They just didn't say anything. Well, there are many things buried under the sacred lake. It's also a kind of opportunity for Nuoxing to go in. Just be safe. With a sigh, Jin Jinwang shook his head again. His eyes vigilantly swept across the surroundings, but he didn't find anything unusual. Only then did he turn around and see that Yao Hua was also fine. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Suddenly, his mind trembled, making Jin Jinwang pause for a moment. He slowly raised his head, his pupils narrowing slightly. His body stopped at the edge of the sacred lake. Yun Nuoxing shook his head and his heart trembled. The closer he got to the center of the sacred lake, the richer the light element energy. There was also an energy that made even him feel oppressed. The pure gold soul jade that had just been thrown and was right in front of him. Yun Nuoxing thought for a moment and reached out to touch it. The pure gold soul jade was only the size of a fist. It was warm to the touch, and the red dot in the center of the jade was particularly bright. Carefully putting away this high-quality jade, Yun Nuoxing lowered his head. He couldn't see how deep it was, but it gave him a faint feeling of palpitations, as if there was something down there. After discovering this, Yun Nuoxing had some thoughts of retreating. Looking down, it was too deep, and he couldn't see the bottom at all. If he didn't go back when the time came, there might be some danger. Although this place was filled with light elements, he couldn't completely use them. Just as Yun Nuoxing was hesitating whether or not to go back, a red suddenly flickered in the center of the sacred lake. The flickering red light was noticed by Yun Nuoxing. He immediately cried out in surprise and looked around hesitantly. Only then did he move his body and swim towards the flickering red light. With the help of light elements, his speed was extremely fast. A moment later, the red light appeared in Yun Nuoxing's field of vision. At this moment, he had also reached the bottom of the sacred lake. At the bottom of the sacred lake was a flat ground. Countless swords and sabers were stabbed into the ground. These sabers and swords were extremely broken. The bodies of the swords were covered with scars and traces of time. The edge of each sword was cracked open. Pieces of broken pieces were lying on the ground. This place seemed to be a battlefield. The broken weapons were telling the story of how fierce the battle here was. His finger lightly touched a huge ancient sword. The latter turned into a pile of powder upon contact, slowly sinking to the bottom of the lake. The weapons here had been placed here for a very long time. Although the heavy, radiant, sacred water isolated the air, it couldn't withstand the torrent of time and was washed into powder. Looking not far away, the red light was emitted by a round bead. This bead had a radius of 3 meters. Half of it was buried at the bottom of the lake. In other words, it blocked a passage that led to the bottom. The terrain around the bead was slightly sunken. It seemed that this place hadn't reached the bottom of the sacred lake yet. Light elements. No, it's not this color, but it's this energy. When Yunuashing saw the bead for the first time, he sucked in a breath of cold air. This bead was filled with light elements. However, its color wasn't the bright gold that he was familiar with. Instead, it was fiery red. When he saw the bead, he also saw the passage that seemed to lead to the bottom. After muttering to himself for a moment, he decided to ignore this matter. He didn't know what was below. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he saw that the red light from the bead suddenly receded a little. The sudden change stunned Yunuashing. At this moment, his eyes became resplendent. Several colors blended together. Through his evil spirit eye, he saw that in the center of the bead, there was actually a round, blood-red bead the size of a thumb. The blood-red bead wasn't big. However, it was constantly emitting a blood-red light. It overshadowed the radiance of the bead that was condensed from extremely rich light elements. It was like a flaming bead. It was very mysterious. Blood Soul Bead. The Blood Soul Bead was a kind of energy bead condensed from thousands of types of blood that contained mysterious energy. It was refined countless times in an extremely rich and pure energy. This kind of bead contained an unusually vast amount of energy. It seemed that countless people had died in this ancient battlefield. In addition to the light elements here, it coincidentally formed the legendary Blood Soul Bead. It was said that the Blood Soul Bead was used to refine some immortal grade or even saint grade elixirs or 11th grade weapons. However, it was unknown how many people's blood had been sacrificed to condense this thing into a thumb-sized piece. Although the energy it contained was huge, it was also very strange. A mysterious item like the Blood Soul Bead could only be found in ancient battlefields, especially in ancient battlefields with rich elements. It was extremely difficult to find. Occasionally, it would be found in ancient battlefields and forbidden areas. Generally speaking, the Blood Soul Beads in the hands of some people were mostly obtained in this way. It was very difficult for people to replicate them. The Blood Soul Bead contains thousands of mysterious energies. The thousands of energies fuse together but don't repel each other. If it was refined into the core of a weapon, it would probably be able to make a weapon more powerful than the Black Sickle of Nightmare. When Yunuashing saw the Blood Soul Bead, his heart couldn't help but beat faster. He also understood how rare the Blood Soul Bead was. The Black Sickle was said to be made from the fusion of 7 different elements. If the Blood Soul Bead was used as the core to refine a weapon, it would definitely contain thousands of different energies. However, Yunuashing didn't have the blueprint to use the Blood Soul Bead to refine a weapon. After all, he wasn't an official blacksmith and didn't have a blueprint in his hands. What he had learned from books was only a rough method. It was possible to refine a 1st or 2nd grade weapon. As for a high-grade weapon, forget about it. Well, no matter what, I'll keep it since I've seen it. Even if I can't refine it into a weapon, I might be able to refine it into some kind of elixir when I see Xianin in the future. Yunuashing nodded as he stared intently at the red bead. Just as he was about to reach out and take it out, he was stunned. Chapter 410. Previously, his gaze was completely focused on the Blood Spirit Pearl, and he did not take a closer look at the huge golden pearl. When he inadvertently glanced at it, he saw a line of words engraved on the pearl. Did someone come down here before? When the blood spirit pearl was formed, the sacred light lake must have already appeared. Yin Nuashing scratched his head and shifted his gaze from the blood spirit pearl to the line of words. If someone in the future comes here, they can take the blood spirit pearl, but do not move the golden pearl that suppresses the lake eye. Otherwise, there will be a great disaster. The words were powerful and forceful. They were forcefully engraved in one's mind after a glance. Moreover, they contained a powerful aura that made Yin Nuashing take a step back quickly. The aura was so terrifying that he could not take a few glances at it. The person who wrote these words back then was either a rebirth realm expert or a god emperor expert. Ziya's voice resounded in Yin Nuashing's mind. Yin Nuashing was shocked. Such a strong cultivator could indeed break through the holy lake and reach the bottom of the lake. Perhaps only such a person would disdain to collect the blood spirit pearl. However, what's at the bottom of the lake eye? Is it really useful to hold it down like this? Why do I feel like I can make it float with a casual kick? Yin Nuashing could not help but mutter to himself as he carefully glanced at the line of words. However, he did not ignore these words. Since an expert of such a level had said so, he would be courting death if he casually fiddled with it. Ziyi sighed and said, "There is a seal here that locks this huge golden bead here. As the eye of a seal, it's not as simple as it seems on the surface. Even I might not be able to break this seal." Ziyi sighed and said, Yin Nuashing laughed embarrassedly. After pondering for a moment, he directly ignored those words. Anyway, he was not interested in what was at the bottom of the lake. He was more interested in the blood spirit pearl. The blood spiritual bead is an accompanying product of the golden bead. Although the person who engraved the restriction did not completely place it in the formation eye, it can be regarded as half of the formation eye. If you casually remove it, who knows what will happen? Just as Yin Nuashing was about to reach out and remove the blood spirit pearl, Ziyi laughed, causing her to stop abruptly. However, after a moment, the paused hand continued to move forward again. In the end, he could not resist the temptation in his heart. Riches and honor were found in the midst of danger. Taking a little risk for a mysterious object like the blood spirit pearl was nothing. With this thought flashing through her mind, Yin Nuashing relaxed a little and placed her palm on the golden bead. However, there was no tactile sensation as she imagined. Her palm easily passed through the golden bead as if this huge thing did not exist. However, she could feel a little energy moving on her arm. Moreover, as soon as her arm passed through the golden bead, the seemingly calm yet violent energy contained in the blood spirit pearl caused Yin Nuashing's palm to tremble slightly. Her slender throat moved a little. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and stared intently at the blood-red bead. He was waiting for the best opportunity to strike. After a moment of observation, Yin Nuashing already understood that the energy in the blood spirit pearl would intermittently increase or decrease. It could be distinguished by the intensity of its flickering light. This red bead's flickering light was the only change at the bottom of this bottomless golden lake. As for Yin Nuashing, he was like a cheetah staring at its prey. He squatted there steadily and motionlessly. This silence lasted for an unknown period of time. Suddenly, the flickering red bead fell to the dimmest level. Hey! The moment the red bead suddenly dimmed, Yin Nuashing suddenly pounced like a cheetah. Her palm shot out like lightning. In less than a breath's time, her palm tightly grasped the red bead. A slight burning sound was heard, causing Yin Nuashing's palm to hurt. Although the energy in the blood spirit pearl had been restrained to the lowest level, the overflowing energy still gave her a fierce blow. As soon as her palm grabbed the blood spirit pearl, a burning sensation was transmitted to her palm. However, the purple night flame quickly rushed over, and this burning sensation didn't cause any harm to her for a short period of time. The burning sensation lasted for an extremely short period of time. Yin Nuashing suddenly withdrew his hand and swept the blood spirit pearl away. Then, in an instant, he stuffed it into the jade bottle. At the same time, his body shot toward the surface of the lake. Bang! Just as Ziyi had guessed, as soon as the blood spirit pearl left the golden bead, the latter seemed to have sensed it. A terrifying suction force suddenly erupted and affected the fleeing figure. Feeling the violent suction force coming from behind, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but feel her scalp go numb. Under this suction force, her speed was affected. Immediately, she clenched her teeth and released the light element from her body. Using her speed, she rushed towards the surface of the lake with a bang. Just as Yin Nuo planet left the range of the golden pearl suction force, the latter stopped abruptly, causing the people who had just flown a distance away to stop abruptly. They turned back to take a look. Under the calm water flow, there was a brilliant gold and nothing could be seen. Sure enough, the blood spirit pearl acted as half of the array's core and used its energy to maintain the restriction, Ziyi said indifferently. Ziyi faintly said, however, after the blood spirit pearl left, the surrounding energy naturally surged up and filled the hole. You should be glad that the one who set up the array didn't use the blood spirit pearl as the complete array core. Otherwise, the energy absorbed would definitely be more than that. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly. She touched her forehead with her palm and didn't say anything. Looking at the calm bottom of the lake, she carefully retreated until she was close to the surface of the lake. Then, she changed her direction and carefully swam towards the shore. Just as she turned her gaze back, Yin Nuoxing realized that the many hands and feet that were searching in the water had disappeared. There didn't seem to be anyone in the sacred lake. This strange phenomenon left a huge question mark in her mind. Shouldn't that group of people, who were like wolves and tigers, be searching for the sacred artifact nonstop now? The doubts in his heart made Yin Nuoxing frown. He stopped swimming and carefully popped his head out of the water. Bang! Just as Yin Nuoxing poked her head out, a low muffled sound suddenly came from midair. Then, two figures quickly separated from each other in the sky. The energy ripples quickly dissipated in the air, and the sound of the wind kept ringing. The Divine King? How did you get into a fight with someone after going down? Seeing a figure land on the shore, Yin Nuoxing's expression changed slightly. When he saw that everyone was at the side and was safe, he heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly raised his head and looked at the person who was still in midair. He couldn't help but frown. Even the Divine King and the others couldn't fly here, but this person could stay in midair. When he clearly saw who this person was, his expression changed drastically. Long golden hair moved without any wind, revealing a thin face. There was no expression on the faint face and a pair of empty eyes. Anyone who saw them couldn't help but shudder. Yin Nuoxing was no stranger to this face. Those empty eyes left a deep impression on him. He had only seen such empty eyes once. Back in the deep sea of the East Sea, the person who had subdued the sea prison flame before he did. That person's physique was the body of time and space. Not far away, the people who had been watching the battle anxiously were stunned when they saw him float up. Then, they looked a little flustered. Ziyin hurriedly transmitted his voice and even made a few obscure hand gestures. Little star, quickly go down. Don't come up. The voice that suddenly sounded in Yin Nuoxing's ears stunned him. He didn't understand why Ziyin suddenly asked him to go down. He looked at the shore and saw Lei Tian and the other divine kings protecting Ziyin and the others in the middle. They looked at him nervously as if they were trying to tell him something. On the other side, Jin Jinwang was panting slightly. His mouth opened and closed as he transmitted his voice to Yin Nuoxing. From the looks of it, he didn't seem to be a match for that young man. During this short period of time, the young man who was floating in midair finally saw Yin Nuoxing. His gaze instantly became extremely sinister, and a cold, murderous aura arose from him. Yin Nuoxing, as expected, you're here. A faint voice floated down from the sky, but it sounded like an announcement from the depths of hell. Everyone who heard it shuddered violently. Who? Who are you? Who sent you to kill me? Yin Nuoxing frowned when he sensed the young man's boundless, murderous aura. He really didn't know when he had offended this guy. The only thing he could think of was that some powerful force was so determined to get rid of him that they sent this guy out. You, die. The young man's empty eyes suddenly lit up with a sinister light. His body trembled violently, and a chaotic aura suddenly surged out of his body. Instantly, the sky and earth shook violently. Everyone could even feel that the time in this area seemed to have become chaotic. Die. With that one word, the young man's figure suddenly appeared above Yin Nuoxing's head. His golden palm carried a sharp energy as it grabbed at Yin Nuoxing's head. Be careful! Xian and the others who were standing on the shore didn't even have time to react when they saw the young man appear in front of Yin Nuoxing. They only had time to warn him. At the same time, a burly figure charged out like lightning. Clang! The golden palm collided violently with the silver-blue palm that suddenly appeared. Energy and lightning shot out in all directions, drawing streaks on the surface of the lake. You're too arrogant. Lei Tian raised his head under the strong wind. His silver eyes seemed to contain lightning. With a shake of his palm, a thunderbolt traveled along his arm and blasted towards the young man. The golden palm separated immediately upon contact. A deep yellow vortex spun around his body, shattering the violent thunderbolt into pieces. After casually dispelling Lei Tian's attack, the young man's figure trembled and disappeared from the spot. He reappeared in midair and stared at Yin Nuoxing with a pair of sinister eyes. After the thunderbolt attack, Lei Tian grabbed Yin Nuoxing and tapped his feet on the surface of the lake. With a thunderous roar, they instantly left the sacred lake and appeared on the shore. Little star, are you all right? Everyone only saw a flash of lightning before Yin Nuoxing returned from the sacred lake. They hurriedly asked when they saw the confused look on her face. After being stunned for a while, Yin Nuoxing finally regained her senses. She hurriedly shook her head and said, I'm fine. Compared to this, what's going on? Why is that guy here? Yuanshi laughed bitterly and shook his head. We're not sure either. Not long after you went down, he flew over from the horizon and charged towards Xian and me without saying anything. If the Divine King and the others hadn't reacted quickly, we would have been lying on the ground. Yin Nuoxing's gaze instantly became icy cold when he heard this. Even though he didn't know what enmity there was between the two of them, it was a matter between the two of them. He shouldn't drag Ziyin, Yuanshi, and the others into it. That guy is very strong. His cultivation isn't particularly strong, but those yellow vortexes are very strange. No matter what kind of attack is thrown at them, they'll be completely destroyed. The space beside her squirmed slightly, and Jin Wang slowly appeared. He looked at the figure in midair and frowned. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing was protected in the center by everyone, the young man's expression remained calm. It was as if he didn't care about Jin Wang and the others. He directly took a few steps forward. The rumbling sound slowly reverberated in the sky, causing everyone to lose their calm. Move aside. This is between me and him. Chapter 411. Just a few minutes ago, there were already 3 people who claimed that they wanted to kill Yin Nuoxing. Now, there was an extremely strange expert who could fight Jin Wang alone, claiming that he wanted to kill Yin Nuoxing. What's wrong with this world? This was what many people were thinking. Ever since the birth of the spiritual divine physique, many people had used various methods to learn about this physique. They knew how powerful it was. Every physique, regardless of whether it could be fully developed, was one of the rulers of the world. However, it was being challenged one after another. Could it be that this legendary #1 physique had really declined? That's right. This is between us. Then, can you please explain why you attacked Xian and the others just now? After taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoxing gently pushed the crowd aside. His handsome face was gloomy as he walked to the front of the crowd and asked in a deep voice, I didn't want to attack them. I just wanted to use them to find you. After that, I was just defending myself, the golden-robed youth said calmly. That's all. Yin Nuoxing frowned. That's all. The youth stood quietly in the void. He looked as if he had seen through the vicissitudes of life, which gave him a unique aura. His words were calm, as if he was talking about something unimportant. Who are you? Why are you looking for trouble with me? I don't think I've offended you. Yin Nuoxing asked again. The sudden appearance of a strong enemy really confused him. Looking at him, he didn't look like someone who was invited by any force. Zero, this is my name. This is the only thing I can tell you. Next, the youth muttered softly. The young man softly murmured. He raised his right hand slightly and then suddenly clenched it. A large golden sword suddenly appeared in the air. He took a deep breath, and his voice suddenly surged with cold, killing intent. Between you and me, one of us will definitely fall. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, a strong aura suddenly erupted from his body. Dark yellow runes flickered on the surface of the holy lake and then extinguished. Then, everyone saw a dark yellow energy barrier appear out of thin air. It was like an inverted bowl, and it enveloped Yin Nuoxing and the youth. Little Star. Jin Wang had been on high alert all this time, but the speed at which the barrier was expanding had far exceeded his expectations. From a moment the runes appeared to the moment they took shape, it had only been a breath's time. He didn't even have time to rush over and pull Yin Nuoxing away. The surface of the dark yellow barrier was filled with vortexes of various sizes. As they rotated slowly, it gave people the illusion that time had slowed down. Clang! In the void, a long sword suddenly popped out, accompanied by bursts of dragon roars. The dragon's might was astonishing, as if a giant dragon had really awakened in this place. As soon as the long sword appeared, a slender, jade-like hand suddenly appeared on the golden dragon-patterned sword hilt, grasping the long sword and slashing at the dark yellow barrier. Suddenly, a crisp cutting sound rang out, and a hole was cut in the barrier, but it quickly closed. Dragon roar, clearly feeling the mighty dragon's might. Jin Wang's expression changed slightly. This sword contained the true dragon's might, and the might that swept across the entire area was completely like facing an ancient dragon, not a sword. Ignoring everyone's surprise, Xian held the long sword in her jade-like hand and roared. The energy in her body boiled and poured into the long sword continuously. A cold light flashed, and an ear-piercing sound rang out. It could be seen that the hole in the barrier was bigger this time, but it only lasted for a second before it quickly closed again. On the other side, Yuan Shi threw out a fiery red cauldron. The red cauldron quickly expanded to a height of 10 feet and slammed into the barrier. Clang! The violent roar was like the sound of a yellow bell, shaking the air. The beautiful woman on the side also used various methods, but the barrier was impregnable. It didn't budge at all, and everyone was helpless. It's useless. Unless we can get the temple master to use the eternal divine weapon, no one can break this barrier today. Jin Wang sighed, put away the golden bottle, and shook his head. When everyone heard this, they had to stop what they were doing. There were many experts present, but none of them could fully activate the golden bottle. Such a divine weapon could only be fully activated by the gods. Who the hell is this guy? Jin Wang's face was solemn. In the information he had, there was no mention of such a golden-haired young man who was entangled with Yin Nuoxing. Naturally, he didn't know who this young man named Zero was. Hearing this, Yuan Shi shook his head. He didn't know either. This was only the second time they had met Zero. The first time was at the bottom of the sea. As soon as they met, the latter used the illusory time lost domain to seal them. Now, he used it again, and it was even stronger than the last time. Illusory time lost domain. Yuan Shi accidentally blurted out what he was thinking. He was shocked and quickly covered his mouth. When he looked up, he saw Jin Wang and the others staring at him as if they had seen a ghost. This made him very embarrassed. Jin Wang swallowed his saliva and pointed at Yuan Shi, then at the dark yellow barrier. His eyes widened a little. Yuan Shi smiled bitterly and nodded. Little Star is still inside. What should we do? Xian still didn't give up and attacked a few more times. She didn't care what this barrier was. She only knew that Yin Nuoxing was still with that dangerous guy. What else can we do? Jin Wang smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said, such a heaven-defying physique has appeared. You think too highly of yourself. Yin Nuoxing raised his head and curled the corners of his mouth into a cold smile. He had the power of time, But his netherworld ruined sword was not to be trifled with. Her body shook, and blazing flames that covered the sky burst out. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a sea of fire. The soaring temperature caused the sacred lake to boil. "You're not the only one with divine flames." Ling looked indifferently at the light purple sea of fire. He waved his sleeve, and monstrous flames flowed out from the void, covering half the sky. However, when the two divine flames confronted each other, his divine flame seemed to be weaker. But it wasn't completely suppressed by the purple night dark flame. Seeing that the sea prison flame didn't dim, Yun Nuoshing frowned. His purple night dark flame had been strengthened by the Godhead and was comparable to the 20th divine flame on the list. However, it couldn't suppress the sea prison flame, which was ranked 66th. Migre's sword. The great sword in Zero's hand streaked across the void. As the great sword swept past, the energy of the world seemed to be drawn in. The blue sea of flames rapidly gathered. Under Zero's control, the sea of flames rapidly condensed on the greatsword. The greatsword flickered with fiery light and emitted a faint power of destruction. When the energy was completely gathered on the huge sword, Ling sneered. He raised the huge sword high and slashed it down. Suddenly, a blazing sword light that was hundreds of feet long swept across and cut the sacred lake in half. The surrounding ground burst open with huge cracks. The earth shook as if there was an earthquake. If we're talking about swords, yours isn't as good as mine. Looking at the power of the blazing sword light, Yin Nuoshing took a deep breath. His cold eyes were filled with confidence. When it came to the quality of weapons, he wasn't afraid of anyone. Yin Nuoshing took a step forward with the Netherworld Ruins sword in his right hand. He swung it forward, and a vast amount of star power swept out. A tiny black sword light shot out in an instant, and in a few blinks of the eye, it expanded to a length of 1,000 feet. Buzz! As soon as the black sword light expanded, it exploded with a terrifying destructive power. The surrounding ground kept collapsing. Only 100 feet around the sacred lake remained unscathed. Boom! The two sword lights collided heavily. The terrifying impact of the energy swept across the world like a storm. The black sword light released a destructive power that suppressed the other. The two destructive powers exploded. In the end, they disappeared under Yun Nuoshing's calm gaze. "Come again," Yun Nuoshing shouted when the sword light disappeared. However, just as he finished speaking, a huge yellow sword suddenly broke through the void in front of him and slashed towards Yun Nuoshing like a bolt of lightning. "I said that you can't defeat me in the illusory time maze domain," Ling said coldly from the crack in the void. Chapter 412. Yun Nuoshing's eyes flashed with astonishment when he sensed Zero's aura that was several times stronger than before. With a flash of light essence, he instantly disappeared from his original spot. The yellow greatsword swept through the void, but it only touched a pile of dissipating light particles. "In my domain, no matter what movement technique you use, you can forget about escaping." Zero snorted coldly. He forcefully spun around, and the great sword in his hand rumbled. A 300-meter-long sword ray shot out like a giant sickle, causing the entire space to shake. Boom! The sword light shot out like a bolt of lightning, but after flying for about 100 meters, the void suddenly trembled, and the nether void sword appeared out of nowhere. It gently swung forward, and the two sword chi collided with each other. With a loud bang, a black figure was pushed back. This guy's strength has increased by at least 3 times. Yin Nuoshing clenched his teeth as a numb feeling came from his arm. He quickly retreated. He was already a lot weaker than the other young elites, and this strange guy called Zero was also much stronger than him. Now that his aura was even more tyrannical, he couldn't fight him head-on. Before Yin Nuoshing could stop, the space in front of him suddenly fluctuated rapidly. Then, a great sword pierced through the air, stabbing straight at his forehead. The fierce power even split the air in half. "Where do you think you're going?" Zero's face was ice cold. The space around him fluctuated because of the surging aura. Damn it! In a hurry, Yin Nuoxing could only circulate the light essence once more. His figure rapidly retreated, barely avoiding the attack. The instant they crossed paths, the nether void sword in his hand suddenly slashed out horizontally. At the same time, his figure disappeared from his original spot. The whirlpool beside Zero rapidly expanded, easily blocking the nether void sword. He slightly raised the Migres sword. When he saw that Yin Nuoxing had disappeared again, he raised his head and glanced indifferently at a spot not far away. He charged over and waved his arm. The Migres sword carried a fierce aura as it slashed towards the empty space. My speed is also increased by 3 times. In the air, Yin Nuoxing's figure appeared. Looking at the rapidly approaching greatsword, he was very surprised at the opponent's speed. From the very beginning, the light element had not been able to increase the distance between the two of them. The greatsword in his hand violently pierced out. The purplish-black greatsword left behind a shadow in the air. The sharp tip of the sword pierced through the barriers of space. With a loud clang, the tip of the sword directly collided with the Migres sword. The two collided. The force contained in the Migres sword caused Yin Nuoxing's arm to tremble, making him frown again. Too slow. With the Migres sword blocked, Zero quickly turned around and stepped on the Nethervoid sword. His body bounced into the air as the golden light on the greatsword exploded. A sword ray naturally separated itself from the greatsword and shot towards Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing's arm trembled in pain as he casually slashed apart the lightning-like sword chi. His handsome face was filled with seriousness. The two greatswords in his hands suddenly moved slightly. Every time the greatsword moved, it would leave behind a sword-shaped afterimage. At the same time, the purple night flames would be poured into the afterimage, causing it to become extremely hot. Standing quietly in the air, Zero lowered his head and looked at the dozens of afterimages that appeared as Yin Nuoxing's greatsword moved. He could feel the great power contained within those afterimages. In front of the power of time, all energy will be ground to dust. Holding the Migres sword in his hand and twisting his wrist, Zero slowly raised his foot and stomped heavily into the void. An explosion of energy rang out, and the surrounding space began to tremble violently. Following the explosion, dozens and hundreds of yellow vortexes suddenly appeared around Zero. Above the vortexes, azure flames rose, and the temperature of the air quietly rose. Sword God Technique. Myriad Transformation Sword. Raising his eyes to look at Zero in the sky, Yin Nuoxing knitted his brows and abruptly stopped the movement of the greatsword in his hand. With a shout, Yin Nuoxing pointed the golden sacred sword in his hand at Zero. Light elements gushed out from his body like a curtain of light, forming hundreds of illusory energy afterimages that formed a lotus flower. With a slight tremble, the lotus flower rapidly solidified and shot towards Zero in the sky, head to tail. Hundreds and thousands of energy swords continuously cut through the void, as if they were going to cut the entire space apart. The purplish gold energy swords shot out from the tip of the swords and struck the other energy swords. Instantly, the orderly curtain of swords collided with each other and became chaotic like a meteor shower. Zero's expression didn't change. With a wave of his hand, an endless stream of immortal energy gushed out from his body. With the help of this energy, the hundreds of vortexes around him expanded a lot. Then, with a change of position, they densely covered a 10-meter radius around him. The hundreds and thousands of chaotic energy swords came crashing down. Immediately, a series of clanging sounds rang out in the sky. When the energy swords collided with the golden vortexes, they quickly became illusory. Taking a step back, Yin Nuoxing let go of his hands. The nether void sword and golden sacred sword quietly stood by his side. He waved his fair arm, and as his palms moved, the remaining afterimages of the lotus flower actually changed positions and formed several arcs. Myriad Transformation Sword. With a shout, the afterimages trembled slightly and slowly danced. If one were to look closely, they would discover that the afterimages weren't moving slowly. Instead, they were moving so fast that they didn't seem to be moving at all. As the afterimages danced, the colorful sword energy followed the hundreds and thousands of energy swords and attacked the energy vortexes in the sky. Clang! Clang! Seeing that the vortexes didn't change in the slightest after being hit by the energy swords, Yin Nuoxing was slightly startled. Then, he frowned and glanced around. It wasn't possible to break the illusory lost domain amidst the chaos. The amount of energy required was too great. Perhaps Zero would jump out and block it. Your tortoise shell is so hard. It's so hard. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath, and then the seal in his hand changed, causing the immortal energy on his body to explode. The group of swords in the sky suddenly trembled, and then they condensed into a storm of swords like fish swimming in water. Only the sword Shi was left behind to attack the vortex, and the energy swords circled in the sky to form a vortex that was over a kilometer long, and the sharp end of the vortex pointed straight at Zero. Faint purple flames flickered. The faint purple flames burning in Yin Nuoxing's eyes turned black. The flames surrounding his body also turned a deep black. The entire space trembled as if it was about to be burned down. Sword God technique. Yin Nuoxing's hands danced like the wind. All the runes condensed on his right palm, and then he held it in his hand. With a wave of his arm, he withdrew it behind his back. Flames danced in his eyes, making him look extremely demonic. 10,000 swords returned to one. His right hand suddenly pressed into the void in front of him. The vortexes of swords that were several hundred feet long suddenly gathered together and formed a giant sword that was several hundred feet long. Black flames coiled around it. Then it fiercely stabbed at Zero, who was surrounded by the golden vortexes. Crack! When the two collided, the sound of glass shattering came from the sky. The giant energy sword that was several hundred feet long easily penetrated Zero's vortexes and then crashed into the barrier behind him like lightning. Chi! A few strands of Zero's long hair fluttered in the wind. Standing within the vortex barrier, Zero ignored the sword energy that flew past him. Instead, he looked at the giant sword that flew past him. His indifferent eyes surged with a hint of coldness. This was the first time his protective barrier had been broken. Boom! The loud sound of the giant sword crashing into the barrier reverberated both inside and outside the barrier. Everyone was shocked. They quickly turned around and saw that a corner of the barrier had suddenly swelled up and was pushed out by a sharp point. You can't penetrate my barrier. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing was still attacking his barrier without giving up, Zero looked down at him and said coldly, "The power of time surrounding the illusory time, lost domain, was enough to make all energy ineffective." "I don't believe it." Yin Nuoxing snorted coldly, and 6 light purple wings spread out from his back. Boundless wind elements gathered, and his aura suddenly soared at this moment, faintly jumping from the late stage of Immortal 3 to the 6th stage of Immortal 6. This is the 6 demonic wings? This is an ancient secret technique. How can you? Seeing the giant 6 wings spread out, Zero's pupils suddenly shrank. Then he was shocked. His soul force rapidly spread out, wanting to increase the defensive power of the illusory time, lost domain. Too slow. Yin Nuoxing shouted coldly at the words that Zero had just said. He returned them to Zero without changing anything. His hands formed seals at lightning speed. The black flames that wrapped around the huge sword seemed to come alive at this moment. They moved along the sword and stuck to the edge of the barrier. Burning Sky Mantra, Erosion. After he shouted, the flames that clung to the barrier suddenly turned into countless invisible awls. They connected a line and pierced into the barrier. Then the two saw that the area that was eroded by the flames suddenly lit up. Although this barrier is very hard, no matter how hard it is, it can't withstand the burning of the purple night dark flame, which is comparable to the 20th rank. Yin Nuoxing shouted as he looked at the area that was turning white. The burning nature of the divine flame was enough to give many array masters a headache. The terrifying energy that could burn everything could break the world array. Not good. Soaring sword. Spatial rend. Ling Nuoxing thought to himself that something was wrong, and Yin Nuoxing laughed out loud. The Ling Hong sword that was as thin as a silver needle appeared in his hand, and he suddenly swung it across the sky. A slender sword arc seemed to have pierced through the restrictions of time and space, and with a speed that far exceeded the speed of light, it bombarded the enchantment. Boom! Kacha! A shattering sound was emitted from the barrier, after which everyone saw a giant sword that was several hundred feet long pass through the barrier, bringing with it waves of rumbling sounds as it flew into the distant sky. At the same time, the barrier was clearly visible as it quietly turned into a clump of energy particles and dissipated in the air. Only at this moment was everyone able to see the situation within the barrier, and they immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The energy afterimage was not eliminated by Yin Nuoxing. It was just that it no longer released energy. It was gathered by his side like a lotus flower. The 6 wings were folded behind him like a screen. Zero's whirlpool barrier had been dispersed by him. He stood quietly in the air. Although he did not do anything, he gave everyone present a sense of oppression. Flying was not allowed here. Even powerful people like Jin Wang and the others were no exception. However, the latter stood in the air for a long time. Little Star, seeing that Yin Nuoxing was fine, Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Her jade-like hand patted her chest that was heaving up and down due to nervousness. The corners of her mouth could not help but curve into a heart-warming arc. The others also quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Although they did not know how he broke the barrier, it was better to see that he was fine. Hearing some faint voices, Yin Nuoxing turned his head and looked at Xian and the others. He nodded, then turned back and stared at Zero with a serious expression. He had broken his illusory time, Maze Domain, but he had not shown his trump card yet. The battle had just entered its climax. Next, he should be preparing to enter its climax, the 6 wings of the demon. Even the demon race may not be able to cultivate the 6 wings. How did you obtain such a lost secret technique? Chapter 413. A dignified voice reverberated in the sky. At this moment, everyone who heard it was stunned. Even Jin Wang and the others widened their eyes in disbelief as they looked at the 6 wings on Yin Nuoxing's back. This kid actually has the 6 wings of the devil. Humans don't normally have wings, but Little Star is indeed a human. If it's the 6 wings of the devil, then it makes sense. After hearing this name, Jin Wang couldn't help but murmur. He couldn't help but sigh and shake his head. When he raised his head again, the surprise in his eyes had disappeared. This made Yao Hua and the others confused, not knowing what he was sighing about. Divine King, what are the 6 wings of the devil? Yao Hua couldn't help but ask. When he saw Yin Nuoxing's wings before, he didn't pay much attention to it. He thought it was very normal, but now it seemed that it wasn't the case. Normally, humans don't have wings. Wings are a major characteristic of the devil and monster races. With wings, even if they can't control the wind element, they can still roam the 9 heavens. Many monster races will think of ways to form a pair of energy wings after advancing to the mortal realm, so they can fly in the sky. But we humans can sense the elements of heaven and earth and travel with the wind. Naturally, we don't need to do that. The 6 demonic wings is actually a secret technique. It is different from the energy wings. These 6 wings are grown from one's bones. However, this secret technique has a huge drawback. When cultivating it, one will suffer a pain equivalent to having one's tendons pulled out. This is because the bones in the wings are real. It is as if one's flesh and blood are being torn apart and your bones are being stretched out. The pain is unbearable, and once one is unable to endure it, the cultivation will fail and one will die without a doubt. Jin Wang's deep voice made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. Forcibly pulling one's own bones to make them grow a few meters, a dozen meters. That feeling, just thinking about it, was painful. This kind of secret technique is actually not for humans to cultivate. It has the word devil in it. I think you can guess that it's for the devil or monster race. The first condition to cultivate this kind of secret technique is that one must have a super strong body. For the monster race and devil race, who are born with superior physical strength and even soul power, it's easy to cultivate. However, it's not that easy to cultivate. I have seen the 6 wings of the devil race, but it's not like little star's wings that can expand to more than a dozen zhang in size. Normally, it's only a few meters. When the 6 wings are connected to the body, once it's opened, one will be able to sense the wind element and even the energy of heaven and earth much more clearly. It can also enhance one's own energy. It can even borrow the energy of the outside world to strengthen one's body. Its defensive power is also first class. Moreover, the growth of the wings will follow the growth of the practitioner's cultivation. I have seen a devil race with 6 zhang long wings. He was a primary god realm great devil and was very powerful. With the help of the 6 wings, he could even mobilize the elemental energy of heaven and earth. Until now, I haven't seen any devil race or monster race who have it. The most important thing is that the 6 wings of the devil have been lost for a long time. After saying that, Jin Wang sighed regretfully. Although this secret technique wasn't suitable for humans to cultivate, it had to be said that it was a very powerful secret technique. Right, little star is that person's child. It's actually quite normal for him to have this kind of lost secret technique. Just as everyone was shocked and wondering why Yin Nuashing had 6 wings, Jin Wang muttered at the right time. Lei Tian and the others nodded and agreed with his idea. This made Yuan Shi, Yao Hua, and the others even more curious. They really wanted to know who Yin Nuashing's parents were and how they could have such a secret technique. When she heard the voice, Yin Nuashing was slightly stunned. She looked at Zero strangely and then shook her head. She didn't know what 6 wings were either. Back then, when she was still at the mortal stage and was born for the first time, she felt strange at first. It was as if there was something on her back, and she felt uncomfortable all over. Over time, she got used to it, but she didn't investigate what 6 wings were and how they came about. You don't know. Seeing this, Zero sighed and raised her head slightly. She looked at the sky with a complicated expression. The air froze, and everyone couldn't breathe. The discussion had already stopped. Everyone's eyes were focused on the 2 people in front of the sacred lake. A faint sigh suddenly sounded. Zero lowered his head and paused for a moment. Then, she stepped on the barrier with the tip of her foot and disappeared. In an instant, she appeared in front of Yin Nuashing. She swung her giant sword, and with a sharp sword chi, she stabbed it viciously towards Yin Nuashing's heart. Looking at the giant sword that appeared in front of her in the blink of an eye, Yin Nuashing was stunned. She roared angrily, and the power of the stars in her body surged rapidly in her meridians. The golden sacred sword in her left hand swept the Migrez sword away. At the same time, she held the nether void sword in her right hand and slashed at Zero's neck. Zero wasn't surprised that the Migrez sword was swept away. Her left hand was covered in a thin layer of golden light and directly blocked the nether void sword. The 2 collided and a crisp sound rang out. Her right hand pressed towards Yin Nuashing's chest. *T. She didn't have time to close her left and right hands. At this moment, a bronze hand quickly slapped towards Yin Nuashing's chest. Even if she didn't die, she would be crippled. Bang! The light elements on the surface of Yin Nuashing's body rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, a light shield of 1 foot in size was formed on her chest and blocked Zero's punch. This guy, how did his speed and strength double again? Ripples appeared on the light shield, and the light particles swirling around it rapidly surged, resisting the force of Zero's fist. The 6 wings flapped fiercely, and Yin Nuashing kicked Zero's lower abdomen, using the rebound force to quickly retreat. As for Zero, the golden vortex appeared again, completely neutralizing the force of his kick. In the sky, dark yellow energy flowed around Zero's body. At this moment, the energy seemed to be turning golden. The golden light that was faintly shining was moving. Time distortion. Zero shouted and changed his hand seal. The energy on his body suddenly burned like flames. His aura suddenly increased by several times. Faintly, there was a heart-palpitating black energy that overflowed from the power of time. He's close to the half-demon rank, feeling the surge of aura. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. His strength had increased by 2 levels in an instant. Some even had 1 foot in the half-demon rank. It wasn't that there were no secret techniques to increase one's strength, but almost no one had seen a secret technique that could increase one's strength by so many levels. He's extracting the power of time and compressing it. In a short period of time, he can increase his strength by 1 level. Little star, you're in trouble. In Yun Nuoxing's heart, Zi saw this scene and couldn't help but laugh. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Only this girl could laugh every time he fought. He couldn't laugh at all. After using the so-called 6 wings of the demon, his strength was close to Immortal 6. However, Zero had suddenly soared to the half-demon rank. As time passed, the latter's strength seemed to have increased. Zero took a deep breath and stretched out his hand. The Migrez sword flew out from the holy lake and was held in Zero's hand. It also emitted a terrifying aura. A great pressure descended from the sky. It's also a divine weapon. Is it also damaged? Looking at the terrifying Zero, Yun Nuoxing knitted his brows. The moment he furrowed his brows, Yun Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat, and he took a step to the right. Cheek! Just as Yun Nuoxing took a step forward, the space in front of him suddenly fluctuated, and a huge holy sword pierced through like lightning, brushing past Yun Nuoxing's shoulder. The place where Zero had been standing just now was no longer where she had been. After missing, Zero suddenly turned around and held the Migrez sword. His body curved into a strange arc, and he swept it toward Yun Nuoxing's head. Yun Nuoxing's expression didn't change. He spun around and pulled the Nether Void sword to hit the Migrez sword. A loud sound rang out. Yun Nuoxing frowned in pain. He gritted his teeth and waved the 2 huge sword with both hands. They spun at high speed like a windmill. Zero accurately blocked every attack and even counterattacked. Ding ding dang dang. The 3 divine weapons danced in the sky like spinning tops. Every time they collided, the void would fluctuate. The violent sound waves forced the people below to cover their ears with energy. This was a clash between 3 divine weapons. Fortunately, they didn't release all of their energy. Otherwise, this place would have been destroyed. You have 2 swords. I'll use double the speed. Despite being suppressed by Yun Nuoxing's crazy attacks, Zero was unusually calm. He didn't panic at all. The speed at which he waved his swords wasn't any slower than Yun Nuoxing's dual swords. Ah! Yun Nuoxing roared and raised his 2 swords high above his head. All the energy in his body condensed on the 2 swords. With 2 shocking sword beams, he fiercely smashed them towards Zero. A series of sonic booms exploded out, tearing open a crack in the void. The 2 rays of light rapidly enlarged in Zero's eyes. He clenched his fists, and a vast power of time covered the Migrez sword. He didn't dodge and directly slashed at Yun Nuoxing. Clang! The 3 swords clashed, and 2 massive torrents of energy shot out from both ends, tearing a huge rift in space. The area where the holy lake was located sank by several meters. The 2 figures were directly pushed back several hundred meters. Yun Nuoxing swallowed back the sweetness that welled up in his throat. However, his eyes were filled with excitement at this moment. Although the consumption of using a divine artifact was somewhat unbearable for him, fortunately, there was enough light essence here, and he could quickly replenish it. The spiritual godhead is at a disadvantage. Yun Nuoxing's waist-length hair fluttered without wind. Half of it was pale white. On the other hand, Zero was still in the sky. Waves of golden energy flowed out of his body, and he didn't even take a breath. The power of time allows him to maintain his peak condition at all times. If this continues, you'll lose first. Purple Knight's bell-like laughter rang out in Yun Nuoxing's mind, making him smile bitterly. I don't want to drag this out either, but that bastard. Yin Nuashing swallowed a mouthful of blood. His hands trembled slightly. The numbness made him unable to hold onto his swords. Taking a deep breath, Yin Nuashing raised his head and glanced at Zero. Clenching his teeth, the two figures trembled at the same time and disappeared. Then, in the sky above the sacred lake, golden and black radiance flickered. Blazing star energy and chaotic power of time, mixed with sharp sword energy, constantly flew out in the sky. No one could see the battle between the two with their naked eyes. Yin Nuashing used a power that was close to extreme speed, while Zero borrowed the power of time to keep his speed on par with Yin Nuashing. The rumbling of metal became the only melody here. As the battle intensified, the attacks of the two became more and more frenzied. It was extremely shocking. Light shadow flash. Time pierce. Suddenly, two loud shouts rang out from the sky, after which everyone saw a black ray of light rushing towards the sky from below. A sword shadow that was as resplendent as the sun also descended from the sky. Under the nervous gazes of the crowd, they violently collided together. Chapter 414. Boom! An earth-shattering roar resounded in their ears, and the world seemed to have been dyed with white frost. The collision of the two enormous energies caused the entire space to become white, distorted, and wrinkled like a towel. Everyone believed that if anyone poked at it with a finger, the entire space would collapse. Ow! Howl! Howl! The howl resounded through the heavens and the earth, and a high-frequency sound waves swept through the space, blurring everyone's vision. Only a few gods could continue watching. At this moment, the battle between Yin Nuashing and Zero had escalated to a level that did not belong to their level at all. Now, it was not just a battle between the two of them, but also a battle between the three artifacts. Be careful, Jin Wang, who had been watching nervously, shouted. With a wave of his sleeve, a golden light flashed and quickly built a hard barrier, enveloping Yao Hua, Yuan Shi, and the others. Just as the Gold God King's voice rang out, everyone saw that in the void, at the point where the two energies intersected, a black light quietly appeared. A terrifying energy was born, causing everyone's heart to sink into despair. Then boom! An enormous energy storm swept through the heavens and the earth. Looking from afar, the storm stirred up the sky and the earth. Like a miracle, the energy storm raged, and destructive waves spread out like ripples. In the ghostly forest, the dense forest was annihilated at this moment, and nearly 10,000 meters of land was turned into barren land. Hundreds of thick cracks spread out on the ground, as if there was an earthquake, both inside and outside the sacred lake. Many experts were desperately trying to use their techniques, but they were swept into the center of the storm. If they were not careful, they would have a tragic ending. The experts in the Death Mountain range looked at the energy storm that soared into the sky, and a touch of horror surged in their eyes. Although they were far away, they could feel the destructive power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Then they all patted their chests, glad that they did not stay there. With such a big commotion, that thing will wake up soon. That's really bad. Waving his hand to resist the gale that was blowing over, Chiyu sighed and looked at the 9 mountains in the Death Mountain range. He could not help but shake his head. Bang! Yin Nuashing was sent flying. Her body smashed heavily into the holy lake, creating a huge splash. At this moment, the splashing radiant holy water flickered with a strange light, and a gentle energy slowly flowed out. Then, the energy storm that swept through the world suddenly trembled and was forcefully reversed before dissipating. Jin Wang and the rest heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts as they watched the gradually dissipating energy storm. If the energy storm was allowed to continue spinning and the holy lake was not destroyed, they would have suffered a calamity. As the storm dissipated, a figure slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight, causing everyone's hearts to tighten as they hurriedly looked over. In midair, the hundreds of incomplete golden vortexes gradually extinguished. Zero floated in the sky, his long hair disheveled and messy. On his face, there was a dazed look. Even the burning power of time was reduced to sparks of fire. His robes were torn, but his bronze skin was intact. It seemed that he had not suffered too much damage in the center of the energy storm. "Where's Little Star?" Xian's eyes immediately turned red when she did not see Yun Nuoxing's figure. Her lily-white hand that was holding the long sword could not help but tremble. "Calm down, Little Star is fine. I saw him fall into the holy lake." The beautiful woman hurriedly patted her head and said when she saw her turbulent expression. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone saw Xian rush out like the wind. It seemed like she was going to jump into the holy lake to rescue Yun Nuoxing. Voila! Just when Xian was about to disregard everything and jump into the holy lake, a voice suddenly sounded out from the lakeside, and it drew the gazes of everyone present over. After that, a white arm stretched out from the holy lake and grabbed onto the lakeside. With a forceful pull, a black shadow was revealed from the holy lake. "Little Star!" Xian immediately cried out when she saw the familiar figure. She hurriedly rushed over and pulled Yun Nuoxing out of the holy lake. Although the latter was not in any danger, his long hair had turned white. It seemed like he had reached his limit. Jin Wang looked at the person who came out of the water with some surprise. He breathed a sigh of relief and smiled bitterly. "What a worrisome fellow. I'm fine." Yun Nuoxing's eyes were tightly shut. He swallowed his saliva and panted slightly. He held the Nethervoid sword and the golden holy sword firmly in his hands, but he did not have the strength to lift them. Yun Nuoxing, in the sky, Zero took a deep breath. The dark yellow power of time flowed around his body. In just a moment, he returned to his original appearance. He looked at the exhausted Yun Nuoxing and slowly reached his right hand into the sky. His long hair moved without wind. A wisp of ethereal aura slowly flowed out of his body, shocking everyone. What? This energy that destroys the balance is, as soon as Zero moved, the Wood God King was the first to sense it. In her heart, she sensed an extremely destructive energy. The energy that could tear everything apart shocked her. Yun Nuoxing also sensed it. After sensing the turbulence in the world, she forced open her tired eyes and struggled to stand up. She looked at Xian, who was supporting her, and Yuan Shi. She panted a few times and shouted in a panic, "Go! Don't come over!" Yun Nuoxing pushed Xian weakly. She stumbled and stabbed her sword into the ground. It took her a lot of effort to stabilize herself. "Xingxing, what's wrong?" Xian felt that something was wrong. He could not tell what was going on. Yun Nuoxing did not push him away. She felt a little distressed when she saw his weak appearance. "Don't worry about it. Go. God King, take her away." Yun Nuoxing shook her head and waved her hand. A gentle wind pushed Xian towards the beautiful woman. Everyone was confused. They did not know what was going on. In the sky, Zero slowly closed his eyes. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes. His slightly open palms suddenly opened to their widest. His long hair danced in the wind. A golden aura emanated from every inch of his body. He was like a god. He did not deliberately control his body and actually floated upwards. As Zero's body slowly rose into the air, the energy around him started to surge like boiling water. Circles of golden energy rippled outwards. Then the invisible elemental energy around him turned into something substantial at this moment. It swirled around him like a vortex and gathered on his palm. It condensed into another vortex on his palm and crazily compressed the energy. In the next moment, a golden light formed in the center of the vortex on his palm. Then it continued to expand. In just a moment, the golden light on his palm formed a huge energy ball that was 10 feet in size. It continued to expand like the third sun in the sky. Yun Nuoxing died. Sweat dripped down Zero's bronze face. His gaze was fixed on Yun Nuoxing below. The energy ball in his hand was still spinning wildly, absorbing the energy of the entire world. Everyone looked up at the dazzling light. Under the light, an increasingly terrifying energy was crazily condensing. Do you really want to fight to the death? Little Star is already lost. Can't you let him live? Yuanshi finally could not help but roar as he stared at the tall young man in the sky. Then, sweat uncontrollably flowed down his forehead. Not many people present could withstand the pressure of the energy ball. Zero ignored Yuanshi's words. He did not even look at him. In his eyes, there was only the weak figure holding the sword. This was a form of disregard. This was because this was a matter between him and himself. No one else could interfere. Rumble. At a certain moment, the energy in Zero's palm reached its peak state. The energy ball in his hand caused the air to wail. It continued to spin, causing the space to quietly collapse. When the energy ball expanded to a size of 10,000 feet, Zero finally stopped suppressing it. His expression was grave and crazy. Following a roar, the already dazzling light ball expanded once again. The chaotic energy formed lightning bolts that overflowed with energy. In the distance, in the Broken Spirit Mountain range, almost everyone stopped what they were doing. They looked at the slowly rising sun and sucked in a breath of cold air. If this energy ball exploded, the entire ghost aura forest would be vaporized. What kind of guy did the spiritual, godly physique offend? Chiyu punched a tree beside him, causing a branch to fall. He looked at the rolling energy ball in fear. Although he was excited to know that Yun Nuashing had such a powerful enemy, this enemy could annihilate everyone. Moreover, at this moment, really, this guy, does he want to destroy the entire ghost aura forest? After taking a few deep breaths, Yun Nuashing raised his head. The wind blew his long hair. His fair and handsome face looked a little tired, but more than that, he was calm. He pulled out the Netherworld Ruin Sword and gently extended it in front of him. The light elements in the holy lake seemed to be attracted. They flowed continuously towards the Netherworld Ruin Sword and then circled around his body. Time. Annihilation storm. In the sky, a loud roar resounded. A terrifying energy fluctuation tore the entire space apart. A huge energy ball came down from the sky, like a meteorite crashing into the earth. It covered the sky and pressed down on Yun Nuashing. The already messy area sank a lot under the pressure of the energy. Cracks started to appear and spread. Feeling the terror of the energy in the sky, Gold God King and the others hurriedly took action. Waves of energy rose from their bodies, and in the end, enveloped everyone. As for the other experts, they also hurriedly used their methods. The pressure this time was countless times stronger than the energy storm just now. Taking a deep breath of the air filled with light elements, Yun Nuashing raised the Netherworld Ruin Sword with one hand. He looked up at the huge sword and then at the energy ball that was less than 100 meters away. He allowed a light breath. The origin energy of the spiritual, godly physique flowed out of his body with the last bit of star energy. Even his soul energy and mind energy poured out and poured into the Netherworld Ruin Sword. The energies intertwined, and the Netherworld Ruin Sword suddenly emitted a demonic purple-black light. A great pressure emerged. Although the light was not as bright as the sun in the sky, it gave people a stronger pressure. It was as if an ancient demon god was staring at them. Netherworld Ruin. The blazing huge sword slashed through the air, causing the space to ripple. Yun Nuashing held the Netherworld Ruin Sword tightly behind his back. He stared at the energy ball that was getting closer and closer. The light on the Netherworld Ruin Sword became brighter and brighter. When the energy ball was less than 50 meters away, Yun Nuashing's face was ferocious. He slashed down with the Netherworld Ruin Sword. Firmament slash. A thunderous roar erupted as violent energy wreaked havoc on the ground. A gigantic crescent sword projection shot out from the Netherruin sword, rapidly expanding to a size of over 1,000 feet as it slammed into the ball of energy. Boom! A huge explosion resounded through the entire ghostly forest. Chapter 415. A thunderous boom resounded in the sky above the forest. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. Everyone could not help but tremble in fear. After the explosion, there was a collision of energy that resembled a comet crashing into the earth. The moment the two unparalleled energies came into contact in midair, they released their respective terrifying energies. Suddenly, a gust of wind whizzed past. At the point of contact, even the dark yellow time barrier was distorted by the impact of the powerful energy. The gust of wind whizzed past, and the destructive shock wave in the sky descended like a heavenly tribulation. It released a terrifying destructive force indiscriminately to the surroundings. Yin Nuoxing and Yi Qingyu, who had created such a destructive force, did not even have time to dodge. Kacha! The energy shock wave first came into contact with the defensive shields set up by some of the gods present. However, the latter and the others had obviously underestimated the terrifying energy released by the collision of the two energies. Immediately, the slightly weaker energy shields were completely destroyed by the destructive shockwave. Some of the weaker gods even turned pale, and blood spurted out of their mouths, splattering all over their bodies. This brat has made a big scene. Looking at the energy shields that were gradually shattering and the energy shields that were on the verge of collapse, Jin Wang swallowed his saliva. With a thought, a golden energy burst out from his body. He even took out the Jinling bottle. Together with the huge energy, it formed a protective shield that covered a radius of 100 feet. Boom! As soon as the protective shield was formed, another terrifying energy shock wave came from the sky and hit the protective shield fiercely. Immediately, the latter spread out continuous ripples. This time, the protective shield that was built with the help of the eternal weapon was not in danger of shattering. The broken ground trembled under the fierce shockwave, and there were even dislocations such as sinking or rising. In the end, half of the ghostly forest was no longer what it used to be. Yin Nuoxing raised his head. His face was pale as he looked at the energy shock wave that was surging towards him like a ray of light. He felt the terrifying energy contained in it. He gritted his teeth, and his back shook slightly. Then the 6 demonic wings that were 100 feet long completely wrapped around him. At this time, he no longer had the ability to move. All the energy in his body had been sucked dry, and there was not even much of his origin energy left. Boom! The sudden destructive shock wave slammed heavily into the wings, rolling up feathers. However, the shock wave was not completely blocked by the wings. The remaining vast destructive force was like a volcanic eruption, suddenly erupting for a second time, directly blasting towards the body under the wings. Pucci! After suffering such a fatal blow, the colorful barrier on Yin Nuoxing's body shattered with a loud bang. Her face paled as she spat out a mouthful of dark golden blood, dyeing her wings a scarlet gold color. The sound of bones shattering could even be heard from all over her body. Her body was also sent flying like an arrow by the terrifying force. In the sky that was blocked by the strong light, Zero's body was like a small boat in the middle of a tsunami. His body was constantly swaying due to the strong wind. However, he ignored the waves of energy shock waves that were roaring towards him. The dozens of vortexes around his body spun together, easily canceling out all the shock waves that came crashing towards him. However, from the way he was panting, it seemed that he was about to reach his limit. Holding his head with his hands, Zero shook his head with all his might. He forcefully endured the feeling of weakness in his mind, and his hands quickly formed a seal. As his hand seals changed, layers of dark yellow time power flowed out from the shattered void, the time barrier, and surged into his body. However, this time, the empty energy in his body was not replenished like the previous few times. Feeling the abnormality in his body, Zero suddenly opened his eyes wide. His body trembled, and his hands hung limply by his side. He looked up at the sky and muttered, "I overdrew on time. Too much." His gaze paused for a moment in the sky before he retracted it. Looking at Yin Nuoxing, who was constantly flying backwards, Zero took a deep breath. His gaze once again became ice cold. Bang! Yin Nuoxing's body, which was flying backwards, heavily shot into the mountain wall and fell to the ground. The rolling boulders buried her deeply. Then, a golden figure quickly flew over and swept away the boulders with a wave of his hand. Looking at Yin Nuoxing, who was lying on the ground, and then at the energy storm behind him, a golden giant sword slowly appeared in his hand. Feeling a piercing, killing intent, Yin Nuoxing was slightly taken aback. Her weak hands clawed at the ground, and she forced herself to raise her head. Fresh blood flowed from her eyes, ears, and mouth on her handsome face. She looked extremely miserable, but her eyes were still calm, as if she did not care about the killing intent in front of her at all. Zero narrowed his eyes and looked at Yin Nuoxing. When their eyes met, the air seemed to have solidified. In the distance, the energy storm was wantonly wreaking havoc, but it was unable to disturb this solidified space. You lost. Lifting the Migres sword slightly, Zero pointed it at Yin Nuoxing, who was covered in blood, and sighed as he spoke indifferently. That's right. I lost. It's very obvious, very thorough, a crushing defeat. Yin Nuoxing smiled weakly. A mouthful of blood flowed from her throat to her mouth, dyeing her white teeth crimson. But you can't kill me. Suddenly, Yin Nuoxing smiled and said. Hearing this, Zero's eyes suddenly became sharp. The Migres sword was less than a meter away from Yin Nuoxing's head. As long as he activated the sea prison flame, or slashed down with the sword, Yin Nuoxing would definitely become a thing of the past. I lost, quite thoroughly, but my friends haven't lost yet. They're also a part of my life. Looking at the gradually weakening energy storm, Yin Nuoxing smiled with difficulty. Her eyes were slightly unfocused. She had used up all her energy, and she would not be able to hold on for much longer. Hearing this, Zero's face twitched. His eyes focused, and the Migres sword in his hand stabbed down fiercely. The moment Yin Nuoxing's voice fell, a huge fiery red cauldron rapidly enlarged from afar and crashed towards Zero at lightning speed. The red cauldron cut through the air, and a thunderous sound rang out. Looking at the cauldron's posture, if Zero was hit by the cauldron, even if he had an excellent physique, he would be knocked half to death. Pung! Seeing the huge fiery red cauldron rapidly approaching, Zero smacked his lips rather unhappily. However, he stopped attacking and gave up on Yin Nuoxing. His feet lightly tapped the ground, and his body floated away like a falling leaf. The huge cauldron narrowly missed his body. Whoosh! Just as Zero was repelled by Yuan Shi's attack, the sound of wind breaking resounded in the sky. Xian rushed over at lightning speed, hugged Yin Nuoxing, and retreated a distance to avoid the destructive impact. How is he? Yuan Shi flashed and quickly appeared beside Xian. Looking at the battered and exhausted Yin Nuoxing, he sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly asked. Xian's pretty face was gloomy, and there was a look of worry on her face. This was the first time she had seen Yin Nuoxing suffer such serious injuries. After being hit by an energy that even the Emperor of the Underworld didn't dare to take head-on, there were probably not many people present who could survive. Even if Yin Nuoxing had a divine weapon and a divine item to protect his body, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Jin Wang and the others also hurried over. When they saw Yin Nuoxing covered in blood, their expressions changed. Just as Xian and the others' expressions changed because of Yin Nuoxing's injuries, there was suddenly a violent spatial fluctuation beside the huge energy storm. Then, a vast aura that was much stronger than Jin Wang slowly appeared. Sensing this vast aura, Jin Wang and the others' hearts skipped a beat. They muttered, "This aura, it's from the Qi family." The storm of energy swept across the world, and the vast aura rapidly became clear. A moment later, the storm suddenly paused, and then a vast energy surged out from the storm. It forcefully reversed the storm, and then shook it to the point of slowly dissipating. Looking at the gradually dissipating energy storm, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. If this energy storm was allowed to continue wreaking havoc, everyone present would probably be buried here. As the storm slowly dissipated, a gray figure slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. That vast and mighty aura suddenly soared to the peak at this moment. Boundless pressure descended from the sky, causing everyone's hearts to tighten, causing such a huge commotion in the Death Mountain range. Are you all courting death? Following the appearance of the gray figure, an unfamiliar, icy cold voice slowly resounded across the land. When they heard the icy cold voice that resounded across the sky, the expressions of Jin Wang and the others changed abruptly. They suddenly turned their heads and stared intently at the spot where the storm had dissipated. At that spot, a gray-robed figure appeared in their sight. This youth's face was currently filled with a dark and cold expression. There was a terrifying existence that was sleeping in the Death Mountain range. Yin Nuashing and Zero had caused such a huge commotion that they had to wake it up. Moreover, he had received orders from the upper echelons of the Qi family to go to the center of the Death Mountain range to retrieve something. Now that this trip had become like this, he definitely could not continue. If this matter was investigated, he would definitely not be able to escape responsibility. The youth held a purple longsword in his hand. At the two ends of the sword hilt were lifelike dragon heads. Faint dragon aura lingered on the longsword, emitting a rich dragon's might that caused everyone's legs to go weak. Qi Emperor's sword. That person is Qi Wei. Indeed, in order to attack the ghost aura forest, the Qi family has mobilized almost all of their forces. They even sent out such a person. After clearly seeing this person's appearance, Jin Wang sighed. Not long ago, he had seen him in Distant Spirit City. At that time, Princess Jean and the others had come out to hold the line, so they did not fight. Now, they did not seem to have so much strength. Spiritual divine physique, it's you again. You have repeatedly ruined the plans of the Qi family. Qi Wei's expression was dark. He turned his eyes and looked at the slightly weakened Zero in the distance. A trace of surprise flashed across the depths of his eyes, but no one noticed it. After a moment, he turned his gaze away, and his cold gaze landed on Yin Nuashing, who was in Xian's arms. This time, it's not Little Star's fault. If you want to blame someone, blame that fellow. He is the one who is causing trouble. Jin Wang stood up. On his palm, golden light flickered slightly, and a foot-long treasure bottle appeared in his palm. He took a step forward and stared at Qi Wei indifferently. The golden vase in his hand exuded a breathtaking aura. Qi Wei did not comment on Jin Wang's words. He held the Qi Emperor's sword and pointed it at Yin Nuashing. A terrifying aura slowly spread out, and Jin Wang fearlessly held up the golden vase. The two eternal divine weapons resonated with each other from afar. Everyone present was speechless when they saw this scene. They wanted to come to this place to see if they could encounter any immortal fate, but as soon as they entered, they encountered an earth-shattering battle between Yin Nuashing and Zero. Now, they were facing an even more terrifying battle that could sink the entire Ghost Aura Forest or even half of the Taiyuan region. Greetings, Second Elder. In the distance, Qi Yu and the others finally rushed out of the Death Mountain range. When they saw Qi Wei, they quickly flew over and greeted the young man respectfully. Have you completed your mission? Qi Wei glanced at them and asked. Hearing this, Qi Yu and the others' faces changed slightly. Then they smiled bitterly. They had traveled very quickly. With the help of the forbidden weapons, they had entered the depths of the Death Mountain range ahead of everyone else. Just as they were about to step into the 9 sacred mountains of the mountain range, they were shocked by the battle between Yin Nuashing and Zero and had to retreat. Seeing this, Qi Wei snorted and said, "The mission was not completed. You can't escape the blame." Qi Yu and the others looked bitter, but they did not dare to say anything. They could only smile bitterly and agree. Although he was the third elder of the Qi clan, Qi Wei, as the second elder, had absolute authority over him. Now, the only way to make up for your mistakes is to capture Na Ling godly body. You should know this, Qi Wei said coldly. Qi Yu and the others quickly nodded. Looking at Yin Nuashing, it was obvious that he was exhausted from the battle with Zero. At this time, no matter how many divine weapons he had, he could not activate them. Jin Jinwang was restrained by Qi Wei. God King Wood and God King Thunder were only God of Hell. He, as an Emperor of Hell, could crush them. Don't delay. Let's do it together, Qi said in a low voice. Now that they had the absolute advantage, he naturally would not let go of this opportunity to capture Yin Nuoxing alive and fulfill the lifelong wish of the Qi clan. Lei Tian looked at Qi Wei and Qi Yu in the distance with a gloomy face. He knew very well how big the gap between a god of hell and an emperor of hell was. They had been stuck in the late stage of the god of hell for many years. A god of hell was not afraid of being besieged by 10 divine realm deities. Naturally, an emperor of hell could completely suppress 10 gods of hell. In addition, without the help of Yin Nuoxing's weapons, the situation was not good. Hey, however, we can still escape if we want. We just have to hold on until Jiang Nuoxing and the others escape. Huizhu laughed. Although the situation was dangerous, his expression did not change much. It was as if it had nothing to do with him. Yao Hua, I'll leave it to you. Take Little Star and the others out. The beautiful woman looked at Yao Hua and said solemnly. Hearing this, Yao Hua was stunned. Qi Yu and Qi Wei were blocked. Only Qi Haoyu and Qing Xian were left. This was the matter of the younger generation. Thinking of this, he grinned and a surge of fighting spirit surged in his heart. He laughed and said, No problem. Leave it to us. Damn, we asked you to escort little Xing out, not for you to fight. The few god kings sensed the battle intent, rolled their eyes, and shouted. I know. Yao Hua smiled bitterly. Looking at the 10 people around him, he gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind. He said in a low voice, Stay by my side later. Don't go out. I can rush out in one breath. Little Nuoxing, today I'll show you the Light Temple's understanding and use of the light element. Yao Hua laughed loudly. He didn't give them any time to ask questions. He bit his index finger, causing golden blood to flow out and cover his fingertip. As soon as the blood appeared, Yao Hua's mouth twitched and his body swayed slightly. His gaze was firm and unwavering. Yao Hua's blood-stained finger danced quickly, carving a complicated rune in the void. Then, the surrounding space slowly surged with golden light. As the light element appeared, Yao Hua hooked his finger and slowly moved it to the side. The rune slowly expanded in front of him. In just a short while, it had expanded to a width of 6 meters. As the rune expanded, an illusory rune similar to the one in front of him appeared beneath Yao Hua's feet. Yao Hua's expression became extremely grave, causing Mu Ling and the others to be unable to understand. They had never seen Yao Hua use such a secret technique before. Trying to escape? The commotion was immediately discovered by Qi Yu. His face darkened, and he shouted coldly. The Qi Emperor's sword vibrated, and a 10,000 feet long sword light cut through the air, rushing towards Yin Nuoxing and the others. Jin Jinwang snorted when he saw the sword light rushing towards him. The golden bell bottle trembled slightly, and a golden vortex appeared in the air. It rapidly expanded to 100,000 feet and directly engulfed the entire area. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts when they saw the golden vortex. They believed that if they were sucked into it, even their souls would be annihilated in an instant. In the distant horizon, the sword beam and the vortex violently collided. There was no earth-shattering sound. Instead, there was only the quietly crumbling space and barriers, as well as the overflowing destructive power that spread out. If not for the fact that both of them had sent their energy into the sky, just this collision alone would have turned the entire ghost aura forest into ashes. Boom! The destructive roar that startled all living beings soared into the sky. The loud noise attracted everyone's attention. Then, everyone saw a black light pillar shooting up into the sky from the center of the Death Mountain Range. The black light reflected everyone's stunned faces, especially Qi Wei and Jin Jinwang. They could even feel that the eternal weapons in their hands were suppressed at this moment. The black light pillar shot up into the sky. A chaotic and violent energy rippled from the center of the 9 sacred mountains and spread to every corner of the world at a speed faster than the speed of light. At this moment, the people in the other regions could clearly feel the extremely chaotic energy. Even the emperor of the underworld experts felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. It was difficult for them to even think of resisting. In the distant horizon, the jade-like clouds were lazily floating. Below the jade-green lake, a slender figure was sitting cross-legged on the surface of the lake. A dense energy fog was spiraling around her body. Her beautiful figure was faintly discernible in the fog. Her silver hair was casually draped over her back. Her slender waist was like a willow leaf that could be grasped with one's hand. When the green wind blew, her long hair and dress gently swayed. Her beautiful face was calm, lingering with spirit energy, giving the young girl a kind of otherworldly temperament. The girl closed her eyes slightly. After a while, she suddenly opened them. The surrounding energy fog dissipated and the lake became clear. This energy, looking at the horizon, it was as if she had passed through the boundless void and connected directly to the location of the energy that she had sensed. Mei Mao's silver eyes were filled with astonishment. The turbulence in her heart made the space tremble. She gently spat out 3 words from her red lips. Dark Abyss Sword? Chapter 416. The third divine sword has appeared. The young girl pursed her red lips and slowly stood up on the surface of the lake. She turned around and looked at the distant southern sky. Her calm and refined face revealed a seriousness that had disappeared for many years. There was also a bit of doubt. On her slender neck, a note slowly appeared, causing her expression to suddenly become nervous. She knew that the life of Yun Nuo planet was most likely in danger because the life of the divine talisman of life had changed. Who else could it be other than Xianyin, who had Yun Nuoshing in her heart all day long? Yinin. While Xianyin's face was filled with anxiety, the space beside the jade-green lake behind her gently trembled. After hearing this cry, her anxious expression slowly calmed down. The space trembled slightly. A moment later, a petite and pretty figure slowly appeared. Pink robes clung to her body. Although she was petite, it was not difficult to see that she was already of a certain size. Her slender waist clung to her fiery red hair, and her tender face looked somewhat playful. However, at this moment, she was filled with doubt, just like Xianyin. The Dark Abyss sword has appeared. You must have felt that energy too, right? Is it in the Sourcepeak region this time? Is it in that ghastly forest? The girl threw a barrage of questions at Xianyin as soon as she appeared. The latter could not help but smile bitterly and nod her head. That energy, which was as vast as the ocean, had spread throughout the entire god realm, and they had all clearly felt it. Isn't a little too fast? It's earlier than expected. The girl frowned and crossed her arms. She leaned against a tree behind her and looked at Xianyin, who also had a solemn expression. She softly said, I remember that in our calculations, the Dark Abyss sword would only appear in at least 100,000 years. The location should have been in the Sourcepeak region, but why is it so early? This is already the 5th time that our calculations have deviated. Xianyin shook her head when she heard this. She did not know when the future they had calculated had gradually deviated from its course. Could it be brother? But that shouldn't be the case. Or is there something else? Thinking of this possibility, Xianyin paused for a moment, but she quickly rejected it. Long before Yun Nuoshing appeared, their deductions had already deviated from reality. The girl frowned and muttered, Something is changing the course of events. The heavenly fate prophecy technique still hasn't reached perfection, so it can't take into account all the deviations. Where are Hong Yun and the others? Xianyin asked. He's still somewhere else and can't come back for the time being. We can't leave this place for the time being, so we can't investigate what happened. The girl sighed. Then she waved her hand and said, Compared to those, how is that thing? Hearing this, Xianyin shook her head and said, It will take a long time. Most of the seals have been unlocked, but there's still a considerable amount of them that are difficult to unlock. I estimate that they will require origin divine power to unlock. But Xianyin paused, her fingers brushing a strand of hair. Her beautiful eyes looked at the girl's calm face and said, "If we use up our divine power of origin, we will have to recuperate for a long time." "Maybe I know." The girl nodded heavily. She turned around and walked slowly into the forest. Her childish voice floated in the air. "Enin, just try your best to unlock the seals. Leave the rest to me. When you have time, go and take a look at the fruit. It has been dormant for many years. I will go and make another deduction to see what caused the deviations and what the future will be like." Yin sighed. She didn't say anything. She clasped her hands together and murmured in her heart. She looked in another direction and paused for a long time. A complicated expression flashed across Mei Mao's face. In the end, she turned back to the direction of Taiyuan territory and couldn't help but murmur. Now, she was imprisoned here by the seal. She couldn't leave until the day the seal was broken. She couldn't even release her energy. Although the life link could at least keep Yin Nuashing alive, in other situations, "Brother, I hope you're okay." Outside the ghost Shi forest of the Source Peak region, strong gusts of wind whistled past. Wherever they passed, even space trembled slightly. More than half of the fog that had enveloped the entire region had already quietly dissipated. In the forest, ancient trees that were hundreds of meters tall had fallen to the side. Broken branches could be seen everywhere, and huge boulders had rolled down and destroyed a part of the forest. The thick cracks on the ground extended as far as the eye could see, extending for millions of kilometers. Even the city that had been shrouded in fog had been mostly destroyed by one of the cracks. The dark cracks had expanded like a valley, and if one looked down, one could even see a little bit of golden red surging below if one could see the end of it. Death Mountain Range was the center of the storm. Dust covered the sky and blocked out the sun. The originally dusky Death Mountain Range made it even harder for people to see more than 5 meters. The turbid air was tainted with a nauseating smell of blood. Broken limbs and bones could be faintly seen on the ground. Bright red blood flowed from the broken limbs and dyed the ground red. Crack! The sound of rocks shaking could be heard in the silent space. Looking around, a pile of rubble was gently shaking. A moment later, a majestic aura was emitted and sent the rubble flying. Under the rubble was a round ball that was surrounded by many weapons. After the rubble scattered, the round ball suddenly fell apart. All the weapons fell to the ground. Some of the large weapons even had many cracks, while others had already broken into pieces. These weapons and fragments turned into rays of light when they came into contact with the ground. They surged into the round ball and into Yin Nuashing's body. When all the rays of light surged into her body, Yin Nuashing trembled slightly. Her body fell forward powerlessly. The huge 6 wings also dissipated into a pile of feathers. Her originally pale, handsome face was now like golden paper. There was no color in her face. Even her lips had turned white. "Little star, Nuashing." Nervous shouts came from beside her. Her blurry eyes could only see pairs of feet striding over. Her ears buzzed, and she couldn't hear anything clearly. She moved her mouth. Yin Nuashing thought that he was shouting, but in reality, she couldn't even hear a little sound. A moment later, her body was lifted up by a pair of slightly familiar hands. Then, Yin Nuashing felt a small snake slithering rapidly on her face and body. Although she couldn't see clearly, she instinctively felt that it should be Xian. "How is it?" Yuan Shi hurriedly fell to the side. Just as his palm touched Yin Nuashing, he was sent flying by a pair of hands. Jin Jinwang hurriedly reached out to feel Yin Nuashing's pulse. The former couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He could only squat at the side and ask anxiously. After sensing for a moment, Jin Jinwang's eyes widened in anger. His pupils constricted slightly. A moment later, a hint of coldness surged in his eyes. He clenched his teeth tightly. Everyone could hear the sound of him grinding his teeth. Xian's pretty face was a little pale. Her hand that was supporting Yin Nuashing was trembling. She asked softly, "Senior Godly King, how are Little Star's injuries?" 70% of the meridians in her body are broken. All her bones are on the verge of breaking. All her energy has been sucked dry. Even her vitality is almost gone. No one here could have blocked that sword just now. Jin Jinwang's voice was low and trembling. His usually smiling face was now filled with irritation and a hint of malevolence. Little brother Nuoxing. Yao Hua wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and asked. Looking at the blood all over his body and his chaotic aura, it was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. 10 minutes ago, Yao Hua had used a secret technique to bring Yin Nuoxing and the others out of this chaotic place. However, the sudden appearance of the giant sword in the Death Spirit Mountain range caused the light elements in the area to fluctuate. This caused him to be unable to use his secret technique in time. In addition, Qi Wei had used the Qi Emperor sword to interfere with them at the critical moment. This caused the runes that Yao Hua had already expended a lot of effort to stop. The spatial passageway could not be opened. At this moment, the Dark Abyss sword exploded. The barrier that Jin Jinwang had set up using all his strength to activate the Golden Bell bottle could not withstand the aftermath of the attack and was shattered. Yin Nuoxing, who had suddenly rushed out, did not allow anyone to pull her back in time. They only saw a pair of wings that filled their vision and heard the wails of the world approaching destruction. Hearing Jin Jinwang's words, Xian's already pale face became even more ghastly. She laughed bitterly as two streams of crystal-clear tears fell uncontrollably. Such serious injuries. The beautiful woman and Lei Tian looked at each other and sighed. Even if Yin Nuoxing had a spiritual divine body that could contain all the energy in the world, she would not be able to withstand the impact of that destructive force. That force would sever all life. If it were not for the many treasures on her, she would probably have died. They also recognized the Black Sword. It was the third most important person on the Divine Weapon ranking, Divine Sword record. Until now, there had been no news of its appearance, nor was there any record of its owner. Jin Jinwang recognized at the moment he saw it. Although he hoped that it was also incomplete, it seemed that among the three known divine swords, it was the most complete one. It was a divine weapon that had reached the great success stage. I think I can still be saved. A voice that was as thin as gossamer quietly sounded out, causing everyone to be shocked. They hurriedly turned their gazes over, only to see Yin Nuoxing's lips moving slightly, curling up into the same arc as before. Everyone sighed. This fellow was simply an unkillable cockroach. Even after suffering such heavy injuries, he still hadn't fainted. Don't speak. We will bring you out now. You'll be fine. Jin Jinwang quickly put away his gloomy expression and said anxiously. Although he wanted to laugh, he could not. After he finished speaking, he quickly looked at the Water God King. The latter received his gaze and nodded vigorously. Then his hands danced as fast as lightning. Lines of energy runes flew out from his palms and surrounded everyone. Only he could bring everyone out now. The person in his arms suddenly moved, startling Xian. She quickly lowered her head and saw Yin Nuoxing's lips moving slightly, but she could not hear anything. She quickly moved her ear closer to her. Quickly leave. This place is not suitable to stay in a Qi family. Yin Nuoxing's weak voice fell into Xian's ears. She could not help but feel her heart ache. She nodded vigorously and hugged Yin Nuoxing with more strength. Divine physique of spiritual reception, you will stay here today. Just as the Water God King was carving lines of runes into the void and was about to forcefully tear open the space here to open a space door, a wild laughter suddenly rang out. Upon hearing this voice, Jin Jinwang's gloomy expression immediately turned ferocious. He raised the golden vase and waved it behind him without hesitation. A golden vortex rapidly formed in midair, then slammed into the void behind him. Everything along the way was pulverized into powder. Even the dust in the sky was sucked into the vortex. In the sky, a blood-red sword ray rapidly cut through the void and collided with the golden vortex. Instantly, cracks appeared in the space where the two collided. Even time seemed to have turned into nothingness. The overflowing power of destruction spread out in all directions. The blood-red sword ray tore the golden vortex apart and flew straight towards Jin Jinwang and the rest. The violent energy sealed the surrounding space. The runes that the Water God King had painstakingly carved started to tremble violently. Then, with a soft buzzing sound, they slowly disappeared. Chief family, the Golden Temple will not rest until you die. Chapter 417. Rumble. In the clear sky, dark clouds suddenly floated over, gathering into a huge cloud in the sky of the Ghost Chi Forest, covering the sky and the sun, covering the entire Ghost Chi Forest. The dark clouds seemed to have a soul-stirring magic power, making people who saw it tremble all over. Thunder clouds churned in the vast and mighty sky. A powerful thunderbolt pressure spread out from within, causing a chill to rise on the skin of many people. The dust floating in the sky had already been completely suppressed. What appeared was a dilapidated ghost aura forest. The collapsed mountain range and the forest had been reduced to flat ground. One could no longer see its original appearance. At a certain moment, the dark clouds rolled more and more violently. An array of golden light tore through the darkness and appeared in the darkness. The golden light was extremely dazzling, and countless people noticed at the moment it appeared. In the distant sky, an extremely terrifying thunderous pressure suddenly emerged and filled the entire sky. The golden bottle has awakened. In front of the radiant Saint Lake, Yuan Shi and the others were unable to open their eyes because of the gale. Several divine kings stood around and jointly built a huge energy shield that enveloped them. When the vast thunderous pressure appeared, Lei Tian's expression changed suddenly. He then looked up and saw a golden thundercloud covering the sky. A golden beam of light, like a divine light that pierced through the chaos, quietly penetrated the clouds and enveloped a golden figure below. It's over, it's over, it's over. Old Jean has gone crazy. He has awakened the will contained in the golden bottle at all costs. This time, the Sourcepeak region is in danger. Huizhu finally couldn't help but smile bitterly when she saw the light that descended like the light of creation and Jin Jinwang's hair fluttering in the wind. The Golden Divine Palace is so bold. In the distant sky, Qi Wei stood with the Qi Emperor's sword in his hand. There was a wound between his eyebrows that could not be healed, and blood was gushing out from it. When he saw the changes in heaven and earth and felt the pressure that filled the sky, he frowned and snorted coldly. The Golden Divine King dared to revive the Golden Bell Bottle, but it did not mean that he would do the same to the Qi Emperor's sword. Two revived, eternal divine weapons were enough to destroy the entire divine world. You forced me to do all of this. Jin Jinwang's voice was as deep as thunder. His golden hair fluttered in the wind, and two small golden flames rose from his golden eyes. From time to time, a thunderbolt would fall. The bright light made him look like a god descending to the mortal world. The pressure from the golden bottle in his hand made the space and time tremble. Qi Wei sneered and pondered for a moment. His body stepped back slightly in the void. Just when everyone thought that he was going to give up on the spiritual divine body, he laughed loudly, and a loud roar spread throughout the ghost forest. The divine physique, Na Ling, has already surrendered. Now is the best time to kill it. What are you waiting for? Kill him, with his blood, as a sacrifice to our dead spirit. The roar spread out mightily, and everyone who heard it was shocked. When Yin Nuoxing was in Lihuan City, he had killed many young geniuses of the big forces. Although it didn't really happen, after countless distortions, it seemed to have become a consensus. Whether it was Yin Nuoxing who did it or not, it was all on him. Now that Qi Wei had shouted, "This despicable old bastard," Jin Jinwang's face changed dramatically. Qi Wei's shout was obviously to kill with a borrowed knife. Many people knew that Yin Nuoxing was here, and there were even existences that were not inferior to them. They were just hiding in the dark and did not come out. Now that Yin Nuoxing was extremely weak, and even his brilliant light element had been exhausted, he couldn't even bring his people out of danger. For the Chi family, this was an excellent opportunity to beat him when he was down. Boom! As soon as Chi Yu finished speaking, a mighty divine power filled the sky in the distance. The aura that it emitted caused the already fragile space to collapse. Even the boundless golden thundercloud formed by the revival of the Golden Bell vase shrank slightly. Everyone's expression changed. They quickly turned their gazes and saw a vast galaxy with specks of starlight hanging in the sky. Every time a star flickered, it would cause the void space to fluctuate. Tens of thousands of rays of starlight hung down from the galaxy, directly locking down this space. Star Map Pavilion, are you going to intervene in this matter? Seeing the vast galaxy, Jin Jinwang immediately knew which eternal magic weapon it was. His face darkened as he shouted fiercely. As for the experts present, when the star chart appeared, all of them quickly retreated and rushed out of the ghastly forest. 2 divine weapons and 1 awakened divine weapon were going to fight. This was an earth-shattering event. Even if an emperor god came, he would fall. Moreover, in the distance, there was a floating dark abyss sword that was releasing a powerful aura. That was a divine weapon that had reached the large success stage. However, the star map did not attack immediately. It only set up a barrier at the end of the boundless sky and locked the space. It did not reveal itself to attack. Others may be afraid of the 9 divine halls, but the Star Map Pavilion is not. Jin Jinwang, I won't say anything to you. Hand over the evil spirit who killed my disciples, and this matter will be resolved. A cold and powerful voice came from the distant sky. Jin Jinwang and the others did not feel anything, but Xian and Yao Hua trembled and almost knelt down. I said that what happened that day had nothing to do with yin washing. You can't distinguish right from wrong and say that the evil spirit should be killed. I think you have evil intentions. Don't think that I don't know what evil tricks you have in mind. Jin Jinwang was fuming with anger. None of these people had good intentions. They could accuse him of any crime. Bah, that little brat is one of your people. Everyone in the world knows that the 9 divine halls want to protect the divine body Na Ling. Do you think you can change your mind? In the sky, the people from a Star Map Pavilion did not show up. They only sent messages with their divine thoughts. The brothers from a Star Map Pavilion are right. Before the matter is resolved, the divine body Na Ling is still the #1 suspect. Why don't we suppress him and let the world discuss how to deal with him? A thunderous voice reverberated in the 9 heavens. In the horizon, the golden clouds suddenly split open, revealing a huge hole. The pitch-black cosmic light penetrated through the clouds. A huge black cauldron that was tens of thousands of feet long appeared in the hole in the golden clouds, slowly descending. At the same time, an aura that was much stronger than the Jinling bottle appeared. The 10,000 origin cauldron is an eternal divine weapon forged from a 12th grade material, the 10,000 origin stone. And it's definitely a high-grade, eternal divine weapon. That's the divine weapon of the 10,000 origin hall. The huge black cauldron hung in the sky, and its unparalleled weight seemed to be pressing down on the void. Where the 3 legs were, the void was penetrated, and only the deep yellow time barrier could withstand its weight. It was recognized as soon as it appeared, and the sound of people sucking in cold breaths could be heard from the horizon. Dozens of streams of starlight flowed out of the black cauldron's mouth. They were like spring water that kept erupting outwards. The black river of stars fell on the ground, leaving behind craters and crushed space. The weapons left behind by the ancient gods confronted each other in the distant sky. There were a total of 4 of them. Now, only the Jinling bottle had awakened. It did not emit any earth-shattering aura. If all 4 of them were to awaken and collide with each other, the consequences would be unimaginable. The entire god world would collapse. 2 of the 12 star palaces came with eternal divine weapons. Although they have not awakened, the situation is not very good. Can old Jin withstand it? What if there is someone else? Seeing the auras in the sky getting stronger and stronger, Huizhu was a little frightened and could not help but say, "It's okay. The situation is still under control. Hearing this, Lei Tian shook his head and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "It's still under control?" When everyone heard this, they were stunned and a little confused. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the situation was not good. How could it be under control? The 12-star palaces are so mighty. 2-star weapons have come down. Why don't the rest of you come out and gather? You must be tired of hiding, right? Seeing the 10,000 origin cauldron appear, Jin Jinwang's face darkened and his voice became cold. The Jinling bottle in his hand emitted an even stronger aura. Even the combined might of 3 eternal divine weapons could not suppress it. Hearing that Jin Jinwang was still calm and only a little more dignified, the people with the divine weapons were stunned for a moment. They were a little confused, but after seeing Jin Jinwang's increasingly dignified expression, the doubts in their hearts gradually dissipated. Obviously, they did not think that Jin Jinwang had any means to escape. If it were not for the fact that they were afraid that Jin Jinwang would fight to the death with them, they might have already attacked. Jin Jinwang is indeed a hero of a generation. He can still remain so calm in the face of such a situation. Qi Wei laughed and gradually calmed down. With 3 divine weapons in a stalemate, Yin Nuoxing would not be able to escape even if she grew wings. Do you think I'm like you? If you have the ability, come up here with your sword, and I'll beat you to death. Jin Jinwang snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "Hee hee, you don't have to provoke me. Not to mention that this place is completely sealed and no news can be transmitted out. Even here, do you think you can protect him with just 1 divine weapon?" Qi Wei laughed coldly. "Why don't you try?" Jin Jinwang laughed angrily. He clenched his fist, and a golden vortex appeared in front of him. Then it expanded to 10,000 feet in size at an astonishing speed. The golden vortex's entrance was dark, and it made everyone present feel a chill in their hearts. This was the second time they saw the power of the golden vase, but they still felt helpless. In the distant sky, the Milky Way that spanned tens of thousands of miles suddenly poured down a waterfall of stars and turned into a divine sword that was stained with starlight. The divine sword pierced towards the golden black vortex. Wherever the divine sword passed, the void trembled. A casual attack of this level could easily tear the void apart. The starlight divine sword pierced into the vortex without any movement or sound. As soon as the divine sword approached the vortex, it was crushed by a strong suction force and returned to its original state. It was sucked into the vortex. As the majestic energy surged into the vortex, the black hole in the center quietly expanded. A surprised voice came from the sky. The current appearance of the golden vase seemed to be a little different from what they had seen just now. Qi Wei frowned and raised the Qi Emperor's sword. Without any fancy moves, he slashed out. A sword light that was tens of thousands of meters long shot out. Everywhere it passed, even the void collapsed. The dark yellow barrier was still shining brightly and did not even ripple because of the sword Qi. The sword light tore through space and rushed into the vortex in an instant. Just as Qi Wei was waiting to see the scene of the former and the latter being annihilated at the same time, the former was disintegrated into primitive energy just like the galaxy after entering the vortex for a short distance. It was then sucked into the black hole, causing it to expand a little. Interesting. Is this the real strength of the golden vase? Legend has it that the divine weapon of the golden deity has the ability to swallow the heavens and the earth. Now that I see it, it really lives up to its reputation. Qi Wei smiled, but his face darkened. Just as the eternal divine weapons in the sky were testing each other, Yin Nuoxing, who had been lying in Xian's arms, suddenly emitted a faint black gas from her lifeless body. It was surging slightly on the surface of her skin. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice it. When the black gas rose, Yin Nuoxing's long white hair suddenly turned into a strange black color. It was wriggling constantly, as if the color was flowing. At this moment, the black seal symbol on the right side of Yin Nuoxing's forehead began to emit a weak light. A strange aura slowly spread out. Yin Nuoxing's tightly shut eyes also slowly opened. However, what he saw was not a faint purple that was like a gem, but a deathly black. It was exactly the same as the pair of emotionless black eyes that Yin had seen back then. Darkness, in the spiritual world, Zai slowly opened Mei Mao. He glanced at the dark energy that swept through Yun Nuoxing's body, then turned to look at Lon Xen Little Phoenix, and the others. He sighed and shook his head. Yun Nuoxing's energy was exhausted. They were maintaining her life and could not care about anything else. Little star, are you okay? When the flowing darkness filled every part of Yun Nuoxing's body, Yun Nuoxing's body slowly floated up. The gas-like black gas that was emitted lifted her up. Xian, who reacted immediately, could not see the strange black gas. He only saw Yun Nuoxing stand up again. He was stunned. A touch of joy flashed in his heart, then turned into doubt. Nuoxing, you can move? Yun Nuoxing? When they heard Xian's voice, everyone retracted their gazes from the sky. When they saw Yun Nuoxing standing with her head raised, they were all stunned. Then there was a puzzled sound. Although they had seen Yun Nuoxing come back to life once this time, she gave off a very oppressive feeling. It was as if the person standing in front of them was not the sunny boy, but a demon. Yun Nuoxing was in a daze for a while. Then, she slowly turned her head. Under her long bangs, there was a pair of emotionless eyes. Her entire eyeballs were filled with a dark light. Her lips were tightly shut, and her handsome face was as cold as ice. Xian and the others covered their mouths. They were so frightened that they forgot what to say for a moment. Jin Wang, who heard a faint sound, turned his head. When he saw Yun Nuoxing stand up, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. Since the strange guy had woken up, it seemed that this situation could be resolved. Although there were 3 eternal weapons present, Jin Wang did not doubt that Yun Nuoxing had the ability to suppress them. On the other hand, Qi Wei and the others frowned when they saw Yun Nuoxing stand up. Even the 2 people from the 12-star palaces who were holding 2 eternal weapons hesitated. They did not know if they should withdraw their weapons. It's good that you've woken up. I'll help you block the 2 people from the 12-star palaces. If you have a way, go and get rid of that guy. I won't stop you this time. Jin Wang laughed. This time, he did not stop Yun Nuoxing. Instead, he deliberately encouraged her to kill Qi Wei. Boom. Vast demon Qi broke out of her body and soared into the sky like a huge dragon. A thick and sticky black aura rose inside and outside Yun Nuoxing's body. The power that did not belong to Yun Nuoxing exploded like a volcanic eruption in a short time, blowing away the people around her. Surging energy shock waves spread out continuously with her as the center, scraping several layers of the ground. The sudden explosion of unfamiliar and powerful energy shocked everyone. Jin Wang, who had just turned his head, was also stunned. He quickly turned his head back and could not help but murmur, "Who are you?" Chapter 418. Black energy kept gushing out of Yun Nuoxing's body, forming a huge whirlwind with him as the center. The strange and demonic darkness made the golden sacred lake lose its color. All the energy in the world was rushing toward him at an impressive speed. Yun Nuoxing did not reject this energy and let it flow into his body, turning it into his own strength. He did not even let go of the energy in the golden thundercloud attracted by the golden bell bottle. The special ability of the spirit receiving divine body to devour energy was vividly displayed. Is that really Little Star? Yuan Shi and the others got up from the rubble with great difficulty. They shook their dizzy heads and looked at the huge whirlwind. They could not help but feel thirsty. Everyone shook their heads when they heard this. They could no longer see through this fellow. They had never seen him use the dark energy that erupted this time. However, from the looks of it, there seemed to be something wrong with it. Even some demon gods would find it difficult to emit such an evil and dark energy. It's that vengeful spirit. Mo Yunhua's eyes widened. That day in the ruins, he saw that the dark energy had invaded Yun Nuoxing's body. However, When he saw that he had woken up safe and sound, he did not ask too much. Now, Mo Yinhua was sure that the dark energy that the latter was releasing was the energy of that vengeful spirit. Although he only caught a glimpse of it, there was no doubt about it. This is a big shot. But who is he? Zero could not help but murmur as he retreated far away after Yin Nuoxing released this aura. A faint fear rose in his heart. The young man who was not afraid of Jin Wang and the others, who seemed to be looking down on gods, felt fear when he felt this aura. He looked at the dark abyss sword in the distance, and then turned his head to look at Yin Nuoxing, whose aura was constantly rising and transforming into a physical body. He frowned and his eyes flickered for a while. Finally, he gritted his teeth and gave up on the ladder. His hand slipped out of his sleeve and swiped across the void. The surrounding power of time suddenly expanded and enveloped him. It rapidly shrank and disappeared with Zero. Nuoxing? Even Jin Wang was shocked by the sudden change in Yin Nuoxing's state. This dense demonic aura was no less than that of an expert who had just stepped into the realm of gods. He knew that the latter had a strange, secret technique that could forcibly overdraft all her energy and reach the state of a god emperor for a short period of time. However, this time, what Jin Wang felt was a continuous and leisurely aura. Although I don't know what method you use to raise your strength to this level, but Qi Wei let out a long sigh. After the initial shock, he quickly calmed down. He could feel that Yin Nuoxing's qi was comparable to a god emperor's. He couldn't help but laugh. As long as her strength didn't surpass him, he had nothing to fear. Today, you will still be defeated here. Qi Wei sneered. Holding the Qi Emperor sword in his right hand, his body trembled in the sky and suddenly disappeared. Nuoxing, be careful. Jin Wang looked gloomily at the disappearing Qi Wei. Just as he was about to take action, 2 rivers of stars fell from the sky, and a terrifying pressure locked him down. They were the 2 eternal divine weapons of the celestial pavilion. Well, although we didn't intend to offend the 9 divine temples, we have to seek an explanation for the deaths of our disciples. A dignified voice came from the sky. Jin Wang looked furiously at the 2 divine weapons that had sealed off the sky. After a while, the anger on his face gradually subsided. He let out a long breath and slid his hands out of his sleeves. He stroked the golden vase in front of him and said indifferently and coldly, "It seems that the 9 divine temples have ignored the affairs of the world for so many years that no one takes us seriously. That's good. The 9 divine temples need an extremely powerful deterrent to make a comeback. Let's start with you." As Jin Wang's voice fell, the surrounding space suddenly fluctuated rapidly. An aura as vast as the sea slowly gushed out from his body. The aura that was enhanced by the golden vase was so powerful that no one present could match it. In the sky, the 2 eternal weapons trembled slightly when they sensed the terrifying aura of the Golden God King that had almost reached its peak and was tainted with the aura of a divine weapon. The 2 eternal weapons in the sky trembled slightly. The 2 star areas connected together, and the aura of the 2 eternal weapons converged. Only then did they manage to resist the Golden God King. Although they had 2 eternal weapons, they would be at a disadvantage if they encountered a Nether King who risked his life to resurrect an eternal weapon. While the entire sky was shaking because of the 3 vast auras, Qi Wei had already appeared in front of Yin Nuoxing. The Qi Emperor sword was not fancy at all. It was purely powered by energy and slashed towards Yin Nuoxing. Wherever the sword passed, even the space was split into 2. Under the mighty black whirlwind, there was a beautiful but cold face. Her black hair danced in the whirlwind like a waterfall. Her eyes were filled with darkness. Through the fluttering bangs, she saw the approaching Qi Emperor sword. Her gaze became colder and colder. On the palm, chaotic black energy surged rapidly and was dyed with specks of golden light. Finally, it condensed on the palm like a glove. Then, it directly stretched out the palm that was enveloped in energy and met the whistling Qi Emperor sword. Is he crazy? He wants to meet a divine weapon with his bare hands? Is he digging his own grave? When the people hundreds of miles away saw Yun Nuoxing's action, they exclaimed. The power of the eternal weapon was unstoppable. Even a deity who had just stepped into the post-god level could not pat his chest and say that he would be able to take it. The eternal weapon left behind by the deities represented the invincible power in eternity. Clang! A crisp sound like that of metal colliding resounded. Just when everyone thought that Yun Nuoxing's arm had been cut in half, they were shocked to find that a black palm had touched the Qi Emperor's sword. Only a few wisps of steam rose from the palm. The sword did not even disperse the black energy on the sword. Wow! Seeing this scene, the people who were watching the battle from afar could no longer sit still. Their exclamations were so loud that it almost overturned the space. Under the exclamations, there were many other horrified voices. How many years had it been since someone had met an eternal weapon with their bare hands? Even if someone like Qi Emperor came back to life, he would not be able to do this when he was at the immortal level, no, the initial god level. They would only dare to do this when they were about to step into the reincarnation state. Qi Wei was also shocked. His eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. He knew very well that although that sword strike, just now, was nothing special, it was still capable of cleaving apart half a large area. Yet, it still couldn't shake this slender palm. Yun Nuoxing's black pupils were cold. She fixed her hollow eyes on Qi Wei. She turned her right hand, and a huge purple-black sword appeared in her hand. Then, she raised it slightly. Netherworld ruins, sword. Her voice was so cold that it did not contain a trace of emotion. There was no human warmth in her voice. The temperature of the place suddenly dropped a lot. Everyone even shivered. Qi Wei was stunned when he saw that Yun Nuoxing's eyes only fixed on him for a moment, and then turned to look behind him. Then, he suddenly remembered that Qi Haoyu and Qi Yu were behind him. Thinking of this, Qi Wei's expression changed dramatically. He gave up on Yun Nuoxing and rushed toward Qi Yu and the others behind him. Boom! Right at the instant that Qi Wei turned around and flew out, Yun Nuoxing's nether void sword suddenly descended, and then a black ray of light pounced forward like a ferocious tiger. It expanded to an enormous size in just a few breaths of time, and then it smashed forcefully against Qi Wei. Boom! The huge sword light slammed into a black mountain peak in front of Qi Wei and the others. Suddenly, the sword light turned into a huge energy beam that was thousands of feet long. It penetrated the heavens and the earth. The roar of the explosion swept toward everyone. Under the illumination of the black energy beam that soared into the sky, almost everyone's hands and feet began to tremble. The continuous surge of energy shocked Jin Wang and the others. Every time the black energy surged, the pressure and energy of the three eternal divine weapons would be interrupted for a moment. Moreover, it was completely interrupted. Outsiders might not be able to see anything, but the three people who were personally wielding the eternal divine weapons knew what was happening at that moment. When the Abyss sword appeared, it was just like now. It was as if the three eternal divine weapons had encountered something even more terrifying and were afraid. The energy beam only existed for less than a minute before it gradually dissipated. In the place where the light beam appeared, only a fan-shaped sword mark and a bottomless hole was left. Under that destructive attack, everything seemed to have turned into ashes. Bang! A dull sound of impact suddenly rang out. Everyone hurriedly turned their gazes and saw a few pieces flying away at any time. A purple energy barrier protected Qi Wei and Qi Haoyu behind it, but the barrier was full of cracks and was still expanding rapidly. Bang! A crisp cracking sound rang out, followed by the clear sound of someone vomiting blood. As soon as the barrier shattered, Qi Wei knelt on the ground with one knee. He clutched his chest with one hand. The purple light around the Qi Emperor's sword that was propped up on the ground had dimmed significantly. Second Elder, seeing Qi Wei's pale face and vomiting blood, Qi Yu and the others were anxious. They hurried forward to check on him, ignoring their messy robes. Humph! Chi Wei was panting like a cow. After a while, he still could not calm down. Bright red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, all the way to his chin, and finally dripped to the ground. He raised his head and looked at Yin Nuoxing with eyes filled with shock. His angry roar had a slight tremble in it. Impossible! Your wizard weapon is incomplete. How can it suppress a flawless, eternal weapon? Jin Wang and the others were shocked. They all knew that the Netherworld Ruin Sword was incomplete. Logically speaking, it would be difficult for it to resist a flawless, eternal weapon. Even if it was once a great achievement weapon that dominated the heavens and earth, it was the same. Now it was incomplete. You talk too much. Chi Wei's angry noise kept echoing in her ears. Yin Nuoxing raised her head slightly and looked at him with disdain. She held the Netherworld Ruin Sword in her hand and slashed at Chi Wei casually. The feeling of death lingered in his heart. Chi Wei broke out in a cold sweat. The Chi Emperor sword was in his hand, and he could still move. As long as he moved, he could take Chi Yu and the others to dodge the attack or block it with the Chi Emperor sword. However, no matter what thoughts he had, no matter how he moved his body, he could not move. He could only watch the black sword radiance with death approach in a flash clang. Just as Chi Wei closed his eyes and waited for death, a black shadow flashed through the air and dashed in front of him. Then it rapidly enlarged. In the next moment, the sword light containing endless power arrived as expected and collided with the black shadow. A violent sound rang out, and after a short pause, the black shadow was suddenly sent flying, somersaulting dozens of times in the air before coming to a stop. The black shadow was a three-legged cauldron that was only a few meters in size. It was the eternal weapon of the Wan Yuan Hall, the Wan Yuan Cauldron. However, there was a dent in this extraordinary cauldron. That was where the Netherworld Ruin Sword had struck. How can it be so powerful? An incomparably solemn voice sounded from the sky. This was the first time that the 10,000 Origin Cauldron had been used against an enemy, but it was only able to barely block the attack. That person had no doubt that if Yun Nuo Star released a bit more energy, the 10,000 Origin Cauldron would be split open. It didn't release the slightest bit of energy, and that black aura actually increased the power of the divine weapon without limit, allowing it to reach the advanced stage in an instant. I've never heard of such a method before. God King Jin couldn't help muttering to himself when he saw the dent in the 1,000 Origin Cauldron. Although he didn't understand the current situation, he was still able to discern the reason why the Nethervoid sword had suddenly become stronger. But now, the person who controls the Netherworld Ruin Sword seems a little strange. Seeing that the two eternal weapons had been repelled, Jin Wang was not excited. The number 1 Divine Sword of the Divine Sword record was not under Yun Nuoxing's control. Chapter 419. His cold gaze slowly shifted from Chi Wei to the 1,000 Origin Cauldron that was repairing itself. The purplish-black giant sword slowly emitted a substantial energy ripple that caused a small crack to appear in the space it passed through. The corner of Yin Nuoxing's mouth twitched, slowly forming an evil smile. His low laughter echoed in everyone's ears like an echo. Everyone who heard it trembled. Chi Wei's face turned pale, and the hand holding the Chi Emperor sword trembled uncontrollably. He couldn't exert any strength no matter how hard he tried. He slowly raised the Nethervoid sword above his head. The substantial energy ripple penetrated the space and extended to the 1,000 Origin Cauldron, locking onto it. The 1,000 Origin Cauldron, which sensed the energy, emitted a terrifying aura. A pitch-black star energy spread out from the 1,000 Origin Cauldron, causing the person holding the cauldron to be stunned. This wasn't his doing, but the 1,000 Origin Cauldron's own initiative. It wanted to fight against the Nethervoid sword. Junior, don't be complacent. Although I don't know where this mysterious energy came from, we have 3 eternal weapons here. Do you think we're afraid of you? Put down your weapons now, and I'll let you die a quick death. In the sky, the person from the astral pavilion shouted. Yin Nuoxing's sudden increase in strength was merely an external force. He didn't care about it at all. The demonic laughter once again reverberated in everyone's ears, sending chills down their spines. They fixed their gazes on Yun Nuoxing, only to see him waving his left hand. A slender azure silver needle appeared, and the moment Ling Hongjian appeared, many of the people present were breathing rapidly. The divine weapon ranked second in the divine weapon list. They had never seen it before. Moving his gaze away from the thousand origin cauldron, Yun Nuoxing maintained that strange smile on his face. He raised his head and looked at the Milky Way that stretched across half the sky, tearing the golden thunderclouds apart. His hands slowly approached. "Junior, what are you doing?" Seeing his actions, the people from the astral pavilion felt uneasy. As Netherworld kings, they were the first to feel uneasy. Immediately, the Milky Way diagram emitted a powerful pressure as they shouted. Ignoring his shout, Yun Nuoxing's eyes were filled with coldness and darkness as he stared at the river of stars. As the two divine weapons in his hands came into contact with each other, the space around him suddenly shattered. A series of thunderous explosions came out, shocking everyone's soul. The Linghong sword has the ability to cut through time and space. Apart from that, it is also a divine sword that can encompass everything. It can be integrated into all weapons, and it can also be integrated into one's body to increase the power of the object it supports. Moreover, the more powerful the object it supports, the more terrifying the increase. Jin Jinwang murmured, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. He quickly descended from the sky and stood beside everyone with the golden bottle in his hand. Only God knew how terrifying the thing born from the fusion of these two divine weapons would be. "Stop him!" Seeing the commotion around Yun Nuoxing, the strong cultivator who was holding the celestial map had a solemn expression on his face. He could feel how terrifying the fusion of the two divine weapons would be. Immediately, he shouted in a deep voice. The celestial map even drew out a vast galaxy. The galaxy that was depicted in it was no different from the real galaxy. When Qi Wei heard this cry, he regained his senses. He clenched his teeth and barely stood up with the Qi Emperor sword in his hand. However, he did not take the initiative to charge forward. Instead, he waved his hand and swept Qi Yu and the rest aside, after which he stared at Yun Nuoxing like a lion. The Qi Emperor sword slowly emitted a heart-palpitating energy fluctuation. The 10,000 origin cauldron beside him also slowly rose into the sky. The mouth of the cauldron tilted, and a concentrated Milky Way poured out from the cauldron and fell to the ground. Wherever the Milky Way passed, even the space was distorted. The weight of the Milky Way was extremely heavy. Yun Nuoxing smiled evilly as he looked at the three eternal divine weapons. The 6 demonic wings were no longer a beautiful light purple, but a strange dark black. It was so dark that it seemed as though it could suck in one's mind. If someone could see the trajectory of the energy, they would see that the aura flowing in the astral diagram was forcibly separated when it was 10 feet away from Yun Nuoxing. There was no energy in the space around him. The Linghong sword and the Netherworld ruins sword in his hands emitted a dazzling light. After a moment of contact, the Linghong sword trembled slightly and then merged into the Netherworld ruins sword under everyone's gaze. Streaks of lightning and sparks swirled around the sword. Gulp! Not far away, Jin Jinwang looked at the wriggling light in Yun Nuoxing's hands and couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. His voice trembled as he said, "Let's retreat." Under countless gazes, Yun Nuoxing clasped his hands together, and the ball of lightning in his hands wriggled rapidly. A moment later, the ball of light suddenly burst open, and a slender sword slowly emerged from the light. Then, Yun Nuoxing held it in his hand. This new divine sword wasn't as wide as the Netherworld Ruins sword. The huge hilt of the sword was surrounded by tricolored light, and intertwining runes spread down from the hilt and covered the entire body of the sword. They were wriggling as if they were alive and looked extremely strange. "Attack! Suppress him!" The expert holding the astrological map looked at the huge sword in shock. After a while, he suddenly shouted, and the astrological map transformed into a vast star field that pressed down on Yun Nuashing. The energy that overflowed from the divine sword made his hair stand on end. Chi Wei also knew how much energy the huge sword contained. At this moment, the three of them had no other choice but to join forces. Forcefully suppressing the surging energy in his body, Chi Wei had a crazed look on his face as he stared at Yun Nuashing. Chi Wei gritted his teeth, held the Chi Emperor's sword, and turned into a ray of light as he charged towards Yun Nuashing. The river of stars that fell on the ground sank a few feet into the ground. It followed a trajectory and extended rapidly on the ground. Then, a huge array formed by the river of stars was formed on the ground. The center of the array was facing Yun Nuashing. Huh? Yun Nuashing laughed evilly. She held the divine sword that was formed by the fusion of the Netherworld Ruin sword and the Ling Hong sword in her right hand and spun it a few times. Then, she held it with both hands and slowly raised it and stabbed it into the ground violently. Buzz! There was a loud, buzzing sound, and a hexagram formed by tricolored light suddenly appeared where Yun Nuashing was standing. After the hexagram appeared, thousands of energy matrices shot out from the 6 tips of the hexagram. In just a moment, the energy matrices covered a radius of 100,000 miles and were still expanding rapidly. Retreat quickly. As soon as the huge array was formed, Jin Wang felt a sense of trepidation and hurriedly shouted. The moment everyone heard the shout, they hurriedly rushed to the edge of the array. Yao Hua even used the light element to envelop everyone. I'm going to kill you today. Yao Hua roared, and dazzling golden energy runes emerged from his body, enveloping everyone. Then, resplendent light particles flickered within the runic boundary. Wait, little star is still there. Seeing the light particles rising around her, Xian panicked. Her eyes were fixed on Yun Nuashing. At this moment, the latter's mind was occupied by chaos, and the space around her had been sealed by the 3 eternal weapons. Let's go first. There's no point in staying here. We'll all be wiped out. Jin Wang looked around and finally gritted his teeth and said in a low voice. But Xian's mouth froze. She still wanted to say something. There's no time. If we stay here any longer, we'll all die. Yao Hua was sweating profusely. When he saw the energy slowly rising from the array that enveloped half of the ghostly forest, his heart suddenly contracted. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Space travel!" Following Yao Hua's shout, the golden runes around everyone suddenly shrank. When the runes completely enveloped everyone and they were about to lose sight of the outside, Xian's heart skipped a beat. Looking at Yun Nuashing, Mei Mao condensed some mist and shouted, "Little star, sigh, kid, nothing must happen to you." Jin Wang and the others also looked back until their vision was covered by the golden light. At this time, they had no other choice. Yun Nuashing's attack did not distinguish between friend and foe at all. The golden runes condensed into a small ray of light and turned into a bright golden light. It suddenly rushed out of the ghostly forest. Jin Wang and the others, who suddenly escaped, also attracted the attention of everyone here. When they saw the array flickering at a high frequency under the ground, they suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Although they did not know what was going on, they also understood that this was definitely a bad thing. Immediately, they hurriedly retreated. For a time, the ghostly forest became extremely chaotic again. When the place fell into chaos, the black pattern on Yun Nuashing's forehead suddenly seemed to come alive and extended a little toward his cheeks. The dark light shone on his handsome face, making him look exceptionally evil and terrifying. On his forehead, the red and pink mark suddenly lit up. A ball of light the size of a palm rushed out, and the red wings spread open. The small phoenix paused in the air and turned its head. Its red eyes looked at Yun Nuashing with some uneasiness, and then it quickly burrowed into his body. Stars fall. When the small phoenix came out of Yun Nuashing's soul and burrowed into his body, His evil and clear voice came into everyone's ears. Everyone, including the three people holding the eternal weapons, felt a sense of despair take root in their hearts, spiritual, divine body. Go to hell. Chi Wei roared furiously. At this moment, he was less than 30 meters away from Yun Nuoxing. He could reach him in an instant. The sudden feeling made him feel terrified, but now there was no way to retreat. The arrow had left the bow, and there was no way to retreat. In just a moment, Chi Huang's sword would pierce through Yun Nuoxing. Boom! A roar that sounded like the destruction of heaven and earth came from afar. A pitch-black light illuminated heaven and earth, and the sun seemed to have turned into a black sun. Everyone looked up and saw a black energy light pillar that covered an area of 1,000,000 miles. At that moment, eternity appeared. That eternal light was the last thing everyone saw. The pitch-black energy light pillar, mixed with the vast power of stars, fell from the sky. In just a moment, it had pierced through the celestial chart and then blasted towards the earth. Boom! The pitch-black light pillar connected the god's world and the star field, like a huge landmark, gorgeous and dazzling. The cataclysmic destructive energy turned into tangible ripples and spread out rapidly. In the ghastly forest, except for the Holy Light Lake and the Broken Soul Mountain, everything was flattened in an instant. Under the crumbling void, cracks appeared in the dark yellow time barrier. Many experts who did not manage to escape in time dissipated and dissolved in the black light pillar, leaving not even a trace behind. The destructive energy ripples continued to spread out. On the trembling and shattered earth, the cracks once again split open, rapidly spreading towards the distant horizon. In the distant horizon, the golden light that was galloping forward suddenly stopped. Looking at the light pillar that was far away, a touch of horror surged in everyone's eyes. Then they took a deep breath. My God, are they trying to destroy the entire Taiyuan domain? Chapter 420. The pillar of light that reached the sky was like a divine light that could destroy the world. It made everyone who sensed it breathless. In front of that vast power, everyone was as small as ants. Bright red flames shot up from the cracks in the ground. This attack hit the core of the earth. Even the magma in the depths of the earth was squeezed up. The land trembled and space wailed. Hot magma swiftly surged out of the crack lines like a crimson wave, after which it spread in a mighty manner within the Source Peak region. At this rate, it would not be long before the northwestern region of the Source Peak region would turn into a sea of magma, the star art. I never thought that such an ancient secret technique would see the light of day again. No matter what, this is too much. Jin Wang could not help but sigh as he looked at the destructive pillar of light. Although he knew how powerful Yun Nuoxing's father was, it seemed a little too powerful now. Divine King? What is the star art? Mu Ling and the others could not help but ask. It's an ancient and mysterious secret technique that mobilizes the endless power of the stars in the star field. It descends like a divine punishment, just like a god standing in the clouds to judge mankind. Jin Wang said slowly with a slight tremble in his voice. The power released by little stars enough to destroy all the stars except for strange places like the realm of the gods. It's so powerful. Hearing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Jin Wang smiled bitterly and stroked Yao Hua's forehead, who had fainted. Golden light surged into his body. He looked at the pillar of light again and sighed. Fortunately, Little Star's strength is not enough. Even if he used a strange, secret technique to overdraw himself to the level of a divine sun, it is still difficult for him to fully exert the power of the star art. Otherwise, the Source Peak territory would really be blown up. However, even so, Chi Wei and the others are doomed this time. If they're not careful, even their eternal magic weapons will be destroyed. The energy contained in the eternal magic weapon is enough to seriously injure experts who have just entered the divine level. Hearing this, Lei Tian and the others laughed sinisterly. The eternal magic weapon was the greatest reliance of a great force that had produced an immortal. If it was destroyed, their status would be in danger. Since coming out from the golden light, Xian had been standing at the side and staring blankly at the light pillar that connected to the sky. Her hands were folded before her chest, and her beautiful eyes were slightly lifeless. Seeing her like this, everyone coughed dryly and stopped talking. I wonder how Little Star is doing. Although the star technique is powerful, if I don't control it well, I will be destroyed by the concentrated power of the stars. Jin Wang sighed again. Don't worry, Little Star will be fine. The beautiful woman walked forward and stroked Xian's head. Hearing this, Xian shook her head blankly. Even she didn't have the confidence to say this. However, she also hoped that Yin Nuoxing would come out unscathed while everyone was talking. The huge pillar of light trembled for a moment. Then, under everyone's nervous gazes, it slowly dissipated. The remaining energy ripples streaked across the space, causing a wave of ripples before disappearing. Following the disappearance of the pillar of light, the sun's rays shone down once again. The warm sunlight made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Phew! Fortunately, it dissipated. If it didn't, Taiyuan City would really be destroyed. Jin Wang smiled bitterly as he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Just as she finished speaking, everyone saw a purple figure transform into a purple ray of light and charged towards the area covered in dust. This caused everyone to bitterly smile. This lasts. You guys find a safe place. I'll go in with Xian and have a look. Jin Wang shouted. When he looked back, Xian's figure was already long gone. He immediately smiled bitterly and hurriedly followed her. Just as Jin Wang and the others moved, not far from them, a few experts plunged into the dust and followed them into the Ghost Chi Forest. Perhaps today was the Ghost Chi Forest calamity, the forbidden area of life that had stood in the northwest of Taiyuan City for dozens of eras, causing people to tremble in fear at the mere mention of its name, had suffered a devastating blow today. The original forest and mountains had been razed to the ground. Only a black mountain range was faintly discernible in the dust and fog. Even so, the 10,000-meter tall mountain peak was enough to make people tremble in fear. Radiant Sacred Lake. A huge energy barrier enveloped the area and blocked the destructive waves. However, in front of the sacred lake, the lingering dust and fog dispersed, revealing a huge hole. Yin Nuoxing's all-out attack had turned this place into a bottomless abyss. Cough! At the edge of the abyss, a figure clung to a rock with one hand. The wounds on his body spurted out a bright red stream that flowed down his body. His left hand weakly held a purple longsword. One side of the dragon head sword's hilt had already been shattered. Even the sword's body was covered in cracks. The cracks were mixed with the person's blood, and it seemed like it would shatter at any time. This powerless figure hanging on the edge of the cliff had a disorderly and weak aura. He gasped for breath and spat out mouthfuls of blood. Anyone could see that the second elder of the Qi clan was seriously injured. If he was not careful, it was not impossible for him to die. If the Qi Emperor's sword had not helped him bear the brunt of the energy impact, he would have turned into ashes long ago. Whoosh! Many ear-piercing sounds came from the horizon. Many figures rushed out of the smoke and dust. They looked at the ghostly forest that had turned into a bottomless abyss. When they saw Qi Wei's sorry state, they looked at each other in dismay. Cold sweat seeped out of their foreheads. They turned to look at another part of the sky. There, a black figure was still flowing with vigorous, dark energy. His breathing was still stable, and his appearance was the same as before. The destructive energy just now did not seem to have caused him any harm. This guy actually defeated Qi Wei. Everyone muttered to themselves. The shock in their voices was very obvious. Qi Wei's strength had reached the Emperor of the Underworld many years ago. Now that he had the Qi Emperor's sword, an eternal divine weapon, in his hand, he could even kill an Emperor God expert. In the world of the gods, he was a first-class expert standing at the top of the pyramid. Now, this expert with such a high status had fallen into such a sorry state. The Qi families. Qi Emperor's sword is about to break. Some sharp-eyed people immediately saw the purple longsword in Qi Wei's hand. When they saw that it was full of cracks, they gasped. An eternal divine weapon was a divine weapon that accompanied a god for his entire life. After such a long time, it was the epitome of invincibility. However, more than half of it had been destroyed by Yun Nuoxing. The whole place was silent. Everyone knew that defeating Qi Wei, an expert who was quite famous even in the god realm, and destroying the legendary divine weapon of the Qi family would be a great achievement. At the very least, the already famous spiritual divine physique would be even more famous. Whoosh! Under the silent sky, there were suddenly two whooshing sounds. Then, two figures appeared beside Qi Wei in a flash and grabbed him, saving him from the danger of falling into the abyss. The one who grabbed Qi Wei was in a gray robe. His aura silenced everyone. Naturally, it was Qi Yu. The other person beside him was none other than Qi Haoyu, the divine son of the Qi family. Qi Yu grabbed Qi Wei, who was covered in blood, and hurriedly supported him. Although Qi Wei was weak, there was still some aura flowing in his body. Qi Yu heaved a sigh of relief. The Emperor of the Netherworld was the foundation of their force. If he died, it would be a great loss. Second Elder, Qi Yu hurriedly called out. Huff! Huff! Qi Wei gritted his teeth to stop the blood from gushing out his mouth. He breathed heavily and looked up at Yun Nuoxing. His eyes were full of horror. Finally, he could not help but shout, This power is definitely not something that a little cultivator of the celestial level like you can control. Who exactly are you? The horror in Qi Wei's eyes was not ignored by the others. They could not help but swallow their saliva. It was unbelievable that a dignified deity of a generation showed such a terrified expression in front of a mortal cultivator. Just as Qi Wei's voice sounded out, a cold gaze suddenly swept over, causing his entire body to tremble. Even the hand that was holding the Qi Emperor's sword could not stop trembling. He forcefully stopped his body from trembling due to fear and opened his eyes with great difficulty. However, he saw Yun Nuoxing in the sky, staring at him with a cold gaze. The corner of Qi Wei's mouth twitched slightly. He gasped for breath for a while and quickly shut his mouth. Previously, he had almost been killed by a casual sword strike because he had said too much. But now, staring at Qi Wei and the others below indifferently, Yun Nuoxing slowly raised her hand. Her palm slipped out of her sleeve, and her slender index finger slowly stretched out. She aimed at Qi Wei, and a little black light quietly appeared on her fingertip. Gulp! Feeling the chaotic energy again, Qi Wei swallowed the blood in his throat and shouted to Qi Yu and the others in a panic. Let's go. Let's go. Hearing this, Qi Yu quickly nodded. However, just as he was about to take the others and run away, the cold gaze locked onto them, causing them to tremble violently. Then they realized that the space around them had somehow frozen, and they could not even move a finger. Outside the ghastly forest, two streams of light suddenly flashed in and stopped above the edge of the abyss. When their eyes swept over the ball of chaotic energy in Yun Nuoxing's hand, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Wait, this guy is no longer the little star you know. Jin Wang took a step forward and reached out his hand to stop the agitated Xian. He looked at Yun Nuoxing and Qi Wei seriously. When he saw the evil smile on Xian's face, he could not help but murmur, This guy is already a different person. A stunning and demonic smile appeared on her handsome face. She slowly raised her hand, and the chaotic and violent energy on her fingertip became more and more concentrated. It was already at a critical state and could erupt with terrifying power like a volcano at any time. Even the gods who were watching felt uneasy. Although she was pointing at Qi Wei and the others, they felt as if she was pointing at them. Roar! Just as the energy from Yun Nuoxing's fingertip was about to shoot out, a dragon's roar suddenly rang out. The vast dragons might cause everyone to be unable to breathe. Then, Everyone saw stars twinkling in the sky as a golden dragon broke out from the star domain. In a few flashes, it rushed over. The dragon was 1,000 meters long, and the scales all over its body shone with a dazzling golden light. 5 huge claws opened and closed, crushing the space. Stars surged in the dragon's eyes. This is the 7 stars dragon bone of the 7 stars temple. Jin Wang glanced at it, took a deep breath, and said, "Unlike all the other eternal weapons, the 7 stars temple's eternal weapon is this golden dragon." It is the only eternal weapon that has self-consciousness and life. Its body is the skeleton left behind by an ancient divine dragon and was refined into a divine weapon. But this golden dragon has its own life force. Ziyin frowned. She could sense a life force that was as vast as the ocean from this golden dragon, and it wasn't as lifeless as a weapon. This is the unique means of the 7 Stars Temple, and it is also a great opportunity for them. The strength of this divine dragon is probably no less than that of a divine spirit. Jin Wang said in a deep voice, "Roar." The golden dragon roared a few times in the sky. Its huge dragon eyes looked at Yun Nuoxing, and it slightly narrowed its eyes. Its slender dragon tail swayed, and it directly rolled up Qi Wei and the others, as well as the sealed space, and threw them into the distance. Yun Nuoxing watched the golden dragon's movements without any emotion in her eyes. She moved her fingers slightly and continued to aim at Qi Wei and the others, who had become small black dots in the sky. The ball of energy in her hand turned into an aurora and shot out violently. "Humph, you little brat. How dare you push your luck?" Faced with Yun Nuoxing's attack, an old and cold voice came from the golden dragon's head. At this moment, the golden dragon also moved. It stretched out its powerful dragon claws and finally collided with the small aurora. Boom! The pitch-black aurora hit the golden dragon's palm, and a horrifying energy storm swept out from the point of contact. The void within 100,000 feet was directly shaken and collapsed. Roar! A dragon's roar, filled with pain, suddenly rang out in the sky. The golden dragon's colossal body began to twist in the sky. Every time its colossal body rolled, space would collapse. Qiyu, who was thrown far away, quickly stabilized himself. Looking at the earth-shattering movement in the distance, he was a little stunned. "What are you waiting for? Let's go." The person on the golden dragon's head saw them stop and couldn't help but frown as he quickly shouted, Thank you for saving us, brother." Qi nodded. He also knew that they shouldn't stay here for long. Cupping his hands, he said in a deep voice and quickly helped Qi Wei disappear into the sky. Looking at Qiyu and the others disappear in the sky, Yun Nuoxing seemed to be stunned for a moment. Then, she slowly raised her head and looked at the huge golden dragon. At this moment, there was a medium-sized hole in the claw of this living weapon, and steam was coming out. The palm of the golden dragon was badly burned, and there were wisps of dark energy lingering around the dragon's claw. If this attack hit the dragon's body directly, no one doubted that the black light would pierce through the dragon's body. The dragon's scales wouldn't be able to block it at all. Humph! The person on the golden dragon's head snorted coldly, but didn't say anything. The golden dragon also didn't say a word. Its other dragon claw grasped at the abyss below. Everyone saw several streams of light rapidly fly up from the abyss and hover around the golden dragon. When they looked closely, they were so frightened that they swallowed their screams. What flew up from the abyss was a picture of Starfield. The stars were dazzling like living creatures, but this magical picture was now broken into several pieces. Some fragments of the canvas were scattered in the air. On the other side, there was a half-broken black cauldron. The divine beast patterns engraved on the cauldron were broken into pieces. The bottom of the cauldron was separated from the body of the cauldron, and it was even cut in half from the middle. This, the star chart, and the 1,000 origin cauldron are both broken. This is unprecedented. An eternal weapon is broken. Everyone murmured in a trembling voice. Eternal weapons were almost invincible in everyone's heart. But today they witnessed 2 or even 3 eternal weapons being broken into pieces with their own eyes. It was unbelievable. That was the incarnation of a god. Humph. Junior, we will settle the score with you for destroying the star god weapons later. When the person on the golden dragon's head saw that 2 eternal weapons had been broken into pieces, his face turned a little ugly, but there was nothing he could do. Yin Nuashing could break 2 eternal weapons so naturally, it could also break a 3rd or a 4th. Although the 7 stars dragon bone of the 7 stars temple was special, it wasn't at the level of a real divine weapon. He didn't think that the golden dragon could deal with the latter. It only appeared to retrieve the fragments of the eternal weapons. As long as the god inside was still there, it could be repaired. After the person finished speaking, he glared fiercely at Yin Nuashing, who knew that the latter also happened to look at him. When their eyes met, the person shuddered violently. That gaze was as if he was looking at grass. There was no emotion, no anger, no indifference, no sadness, no emotion. It was just an empty gaze that made people shudder. After seeing this gaze, the person on the golden dragon's head shivered and didn't dare to say a word. He quickly rode the golden dragon and flew to the horizon. Seeing this, everyone laughed bitterly. A dignified god had been scared away by a single glance. That was so damn funny. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.